Every story has a beginning, but some stories are part of something much larger. What you're about to watch is not just one video. It's a journey through the gods, through the myths, through the philosophy that shaped an entire civilization. Each chapter stands alone. Together, they tell the full story of India and Hinduism. Welcome. This is everything. There are stories that entertain. There are stories that teach, and then there are stories so vast, so layered, so ruthlessly honest about the human condition, that civilizations built themselves around them just to make sense of what they contain. The Mahabharata is not a war story. It was never a war story. It is a record of consequences. Every decision, every silence, every moment of fear dressed up as nobility, all of it, documented across 100,000 verses, by a man who lived through it himself, who shaped it himself, and who wrote it down, so that every generation after him would have no excuse for ignorance. Before you understand the war, you have to understand the wound. And the wound didn't open on a battlefield. It opened in a palace bedroom, in the dark, decades before a single arrow was ever drawn. It begins with a dynasty in collapse. Hastinapur, the greatest kingdom in the ancient world. Throne of the Bharata lineage. Seat of power for generations, and in one generation, it comes apart at the seams. The king, Vichitravirya, dies young, leaving behind 2 widowed queens and no heir. No heir means no future. No future means every neighboring kingdom starts sharpening its ambitions. Queen Satyavati does not panic. She is not the kind of woman who panics. But what she does next is something the official histories tend to gloss over, because it requires admitting that she had a secret she had carried since before her marriage, since before she was a queen, since a night on a riverboat that changed everything. Before she was royalty, Satyavati was a fisherman's daughter, and on that river, years before her marriage, she had a son with the great sage Parashara, a son born in mist and silence, hidden from the world the moment he arrived in it. That son grew up in the forest. He became a scholar, then a sage, then one of the most formidable intellects in all of Vedic civilization. He became Sage Ved Vyas, the man who would one day compile the Vedas, author the Puranas, and write every single word of the Mahabharata. He is the author of the story. He is a character inside it. He is the reason it begins the way it does. Satyavati calls him out of the forest in the dead of night. She asks him to perform Niyoga, an ancient, legally sanctioned Vedic practice in which a sage fathers children on behalf of a deceased man to preserve a family lineage. Documented, accepted, practiced across the ancient world in various forms, and in this moment, absolutely necessary by the logic of the kingdom. But necessity and wisdom are not the same thing. Ambika, the elder queen, is brought to Vyas first. She has never seen a man like him. He is not a courtly figure. He is a forest sage, dark-skinned, wild-haired, eyes burning with the kind of intensity that comes from decades of solitary tapas. He is overwhelming in the way that genuine spiritual power is always overwhelming. And Ambika, in a reflex she cannot control, cannot bring herself to look at him. She closes her eyes. She keeps them closed through the entire encounter. And Dhritarashtra is born blind, not cursed by a god, not punished for a sin. Born blind because of a single involuntary moment of fear in his mother's body, a fear that imprinted itself on the child before he ever drew breath. The Mahabharata records this plainly, without judgment. It simply documents what happened and lets the weight of it settle on you. Then Ambalika enters. She has heard what happened. She is more frightened than her sister. She manages to keep her eyes open, but the blood drains from her face. She goes pale as ash, trembling from the moment she enters until the moment she leaves. And Pandu is born pallid and frail, carrying a physical fragility in his body that will haunt him his entire life, eventually coupling with a sage's curse to prevent him from ever fathering children through natural means. 2 queens, 2 moments of uncontrolled fear. 2 sons who will between them produce 2 sets of children who will spend their entire lives destroying each other. But there is a third encounter that history almost forgets. Satyavati sends Ambika back for another attempt. Ambika cannot face it. She sends her maidservant instead, disguised in royal clothes. The maidservant is not royal. She has no throne to protect, no dynasty to uphold, no fear rooted in the terror of what failure means for an empire. She enters. She looks at Vyas with calm and steadiness. And from that encounter, Vidura is born, the wisest man in Hastinapur, the one human being in that entire palace complex who will see every disaster coming, name it clearly, plead against it, and be ignored at every turn. The maidservant's son, the voice of Dharma, in a court that preferred comfortable illusions to uncomfortable truths. 3 women, 3 different internal states in a single pivotal moment, 3 sons who will shape the fate of civilization. None of them chose their mother's fear. None of them chose what they were born into. And yet every consequence flows from those 3 moments as directly as a river flows from its source. This is what the Mahabharata wants you to sit with. Not gods making arbitrary decisions, human beings in moments of fear or courage or exhaustion making choices, and those choices echoing forward across generations in ways no one could have predicted and no one could undo. Move forward now, past the births, past the childhoods, past the poisoning attempts and the burning houses and the archery contests and the political maneuvering. Past the dice game, though we will return to the dice game because nothing in this story is as devastating as the dice game, and land in year 12 of a 13-year exile. The Pandavas are in the forest, 5 brothers and their shared wife, Draupadi, stripped of their kingdom through a game of dice that was never a fair game, condemned to 12 years of wandering and 1 year of disguise. They are at the absolute lowest point of their lives. Everything they had, throne, army, reputation, home, is gone. They have nothing except each other and the obligations of dharma that keep them moving forward when every human instinct says to stop. It is in this state, broken, exhausted, their resources completely depleted, that the forest delivers one final blow. A Brahmin rushes to them in distress. A deer has run off with his fire-starting implements, the tools essential to his daily rituals. In the dharmic framework of the time, failing to help a Brahmin in need is not a minor oversight. It is a failure of the sacred duty that defines a Kshatriya. The Pandavas give chase. They are warriors, the greatest warriors alive, and the deer eludes them completely. They collapse under a tree, defeated by a deer, in the middle of their exile, with nothing left to give. Nakula is sent to find water from a nearby lake. He does not return. Sahadeva follows. He does not return. Then Arjuna, the greatest archer in the world, the man who will later receive the Bhagavad Gita directly from Krishna's lips, he does not return. Then Bhima, the strongest human being in the epic, a man who can uproot trees and redirect rivers with his bare hands. He does not return. Yudhisthira walks to the lake alone. He finds all 4 of his brothers lying still on the banks, not dead, but not fully alive either, suspended, and from the surface of the water, a voice rises. It identifies itself as a yaksha, a nature spirit, the guardian of this lake. The terms are simple: answer my questions or drink nothing. What follows is one of the most extraordinary intellectual sequences in all of ancient literature. The yaksha does not ask about military strategy or political theory. He asks about the nature of existence itself. What is heavier than the earth? A mother. What is higher than the sky? A father. What travels faster than the wind? The mind. What is more numerous than blades of grass? Thoughts. And then the final question, asked slowly, with the full weight of everything behind it. What is the greatest wonder of the world? Yudhisthira does not need to think. He says, every single day human beings watch other human beings die. They attend the funerals, they mourn the losses, they carry the grief, and then they walk back into their lives utterly convinced that they themselves will not die. that death is something that happens to others, that somehow for them an exception will be made. That is the greatest wonder, that the most universal human experience produces not acceptance, but permanent, bewildering denial. The Yaksha is silent for a long moment. Then he says, "You may revive one brother. Choose. This is the moment. Everything that Yudhisthira is, every value he has ever claimed, every principle he has ever articulated, gets tested in this single choice. He does not choose Arjuna, who is the weapon that will win the war. He does not choose Bhima, whose physical power is irreplaceable on any battlefield. He chooses Nakula." The Yaksha asks why. "Nakula is the son of Madri, your father's second wife. He is not your blood, and the war is coming. Why would you sacrifice military advantage for him?" Yudhisthira says, "My mother Kunti has me. She will not be without a son to represent her. But Madri is gone. She died on my father's funeral pyre. If Nakula dies, there is no one left to carry her forward. A king who is just to his own blood and unjust to those adjacent to it is not truly just. Dharma does not have exceptions for inconvenience." The Yaksha removes his form. He is Yama, the god of death, the lord of Dharma, and Nakula's own divine father. He has come not to take the Pandavas, but to test the one who claims to embody righteousness, and Yudhisthira has passed. Not because he answered the riddles correctly, though he did, but because when given the chance to choose power over principle, he chose principle. All four brothers return to life. Yama blesses them. He promises that their year of disguise will be perfect and undetectable, and as he departs, there is something in the text that is easy to miss, but impossible to forget. This was not the first time Yama had tested Yudhisthira. It will not be the last. Dharma does not test you once and consider the matter settled. It tests you continuously at the exact moments when failing would be most understandable. The Pandavas return from exile. Their year in disguise ends. Their kingdom is not returned. Diplomacy fails. Krishna himself goes to Hastinapur as a peace envoy and is offered nothing, not 5 villages, not one house, not a single plot of land. Duryodhan tries to arrest him. The war becomes inevitable. But before we reach Kurukshetra, there is a scene at the Rajasuya Yajna, the great ceremony of imperial consecration, that contains one of the most precisely documented sequences in the entire epic. Yudhisthira has been recognized as the paramount king. All the rulers of the subcontinent have assembled to offer tribute. The ceremony is enormous, politically, spiritually, cosmically significant, and the honor of being worshipped first, the Agra Puja, the highest ceremonial recognition in the assembly, is given to Krishna. One man stands up to object: Shishupal, king of Chedi. His relationship with Krishna is one of the strangest in the epic. When Shishupal was born, he came into the world with 4 arms and a 3rd eye, signs that terrified his parents and provoked an oracle's declaration that he would be killed by the man in whose presence his extra limbs disappeared. His mother, Krishna's own aunt, carried him from court to court across the subcontinent. Everywhere the limbs remained. Then when Krishna held the infant, the extra arms vanished, the 3rd eye closed. His mother fell at Krishna's feet. He was a young man then, and he looked at the child and made a promise: "I will absorb 100 offenses from him, regardless of their nature." 100. When the 101st comes, the promise ends. This promise is documented in the text as an act of grace. Not a game, not a test, but a genuine gift of divine patience extended to the son of a grieving mother. Shishupal spent his entire adult life as though that promise was an invitation. He insulted Krishna at every opportunity. He attacked his allies. He stole a bride that Krishna had arranged for another king. He opposed him at every political juncture for decades. And every time, nothing. Krishna absorbed it. The promise held. At the Rajasuya Yajna, in front of every king in the ancient world, Shishupal stands up and unleashes everything. He calls Krishna unworthy. He calls the assembled kings fools. He attacks the legitimacy of the ceremony itself, the legitimacy of Yudhishthira's claim, the legitimacy of every person who has honored Krishna with any reverence. He is not speaking from confusion. He is speaking from a lifetime of accumulated opposition, finally given the largest possible stage. The court is silent. Every person in that assembly knows about the promise. Every person is counting. Krishna does not move. At the 100th offense, he is still. The 101st lands. The Sudarshan chakra leaves Krishna's hand before the sound of the words has finished moving through the air. It is not a display of anger. It is the completion of a promise, the closing of an account that Krishna had held open for decades out of love for Shishupal's mother. Shishupal falls, and from his body rises a light, luminous, golden, released, that moves through the air and merges directly into Krishna. This moment is described in the text with profound care. That light is Shishupal's soul, finally liberated. In the theology of the Mahabharata, to be slain by the divine is not punishment. It is the highest possible resolution. Shishupal spent his entire life in enmity with Krishna, and in Vedic understanding, an entity that focuses its entire consciousness on the divine, even through hatred, achieves the same result as one who focuses through devotion. He was released. The assembly watches in silence. The ceremony continues, and somewhere in the room, the first threads of the war that is coming pull just slightly tighter. 18 days. That is how long the war at Kurukshetra lasts. 18 days to end what had been building for generations. By day 17, the mathematics of annihilation are almost complete. Of the 100 sons of Dhritarashtra and Gandhari, 99 are dead. Entire dynasties have been erased. The plains of Kurukshetra hold the remains of what was once the mightiest military civilization in the ancient world. One man survives on the Kaurava side, Duryodhan. He is in a lake, alone. He has used a Vedic technique called Jalastambhana, the ability to breathe and exist within water, to separate himself from the destruction above him. He is not hiding from the battle in cowardice. He is sitting in the silence of the water, with his grief, with the weight of having watched everything he built and everyone he loved be taken apart piece by piece over 17 days. He is not ready to emerge. He may never be ready to emerge, and his mother is waiting. Gandhari. To understand what is about to happen, you have to understand what Gandhari has been doing for the last several decades. When she was brought to Hastinapur as the bride of the blind king Dhritarashtra, she made a choice that is almost impossible to fully comprehend. She took a piece of cloth and tied it around her own eyes. And she left it there. Not for a ritual, not temporarily. She chose to share her husband's darkness for as long as she lived. There is one more thing. One figure moves through this entire epic, through every war council, every exile, every moment of crisis, making decisions that no one fully understands until after they have already changed everything. He is on every side, and no side simultaneously. He drives Arjuna's chariot into the heart of the battle and speaks the words that become the Bhagavad Gita. 18 chapters of the most concentrated spiritual philosophy the world has ever produced.
In the last video, we walked through the Mahabharata, the greatest war ever told. But there was one figure standing at the center of it all, not holding a sword, not commanding an army, holding a whip, and we never got to ask the real question. Who was Krishna? Really? Today, we go deeper. He had the power to end the war in seconds. He chose not to use it. The most powerful being in the universe stood on a battlefield holding a chariot whip, while every warrior around him carried weapons. He made a promise, I will not fight, and he kept it, while thousands died around him. People call Krishna the god of love, the god of butter, the playful, flute-playing deity who danced with the gopis under the moonlight. But that image it hides something far more radical. Because the real Krishna wasn't soft. He was the most strategically dangerous mind in the history of Hindu mythology. At the end of this video, you're going to understand why Krishna winning without fighting is the most unsettling, brilliant thing any god has ever done. Let's set the scene. Kurukshetra, the greatest war ever described in human literature. 18 days, millions of soldiers, two sides of the same family, about to destroy each other completely. And Krishna, avatar of Vishnu, the preserver of the universe, the being who holds cosmic order itself, shows up as a charioteer. Not a general, not a king leading his army, a charioteer. Both sides had asked for his help before the war began. Duryodhana, the Kaurava prince, came first. He chose Krishna's army, a vast legendary force called the Narayani Sena. Arjuna, the Pandava hero, came second. He chose Krishna himself, unarmed. Everyone thought Duryodhana made the smarter deal. He didn't. Here's what most people miss about this moment. Krishna didn't just agree to be Arjuna's charioteer. He engineered the entire situation so that Arjuna would ask. He knew exactly what was coming. He knew Arjuna would collapse on the battlefield. He knew a conversation would need to happen. A conversation that would become the Bhagavad Gita, one of the most influential philosophical texts in human history. The charioteer role wasn't humility, it was positioning. Think about it. The most powerful entity in the room chose the seat that no one was watching, the seat closest to the one person who needed to hear the truth. That's only the surface. Now here's where it gets interesting, really interesting. When Arjuna sees his cousins, his teachers, his grandfather standing across the battlefield, he breaks. He drops his bow. His hands shake. He tells Krishna, "I cannot do this. These are my people. I would rather die than kill them." This is the moment everyone expects a god to say, "Don't worry, you'll be fine. Go fight." Krishna doesn't do that. What he does instead is spend 18 chapters, the entire Bhagavad Gita, dismantling every single excuse Arjuna has. Not with comfort, with precision, with a kind of philosophical ruthlessness that, personally, I find almost uncomfortable to read. He tells Arjuna, "The soul cannot be killed. You are not killing anyone. You are only fulfilling your dharma." Then he goes further. He says, "Attachment to outcomes is the source of all suffering. Do your duty, release the result." And then, this is the part that nobody talks about enough. Krishna reveals his Vishwarupa, his universal form, a form so vast, so terrifying, so beyond human comprehension that Arjuna begs him to stop. He sees all of creation expanding from Krishna's body. He sees time itself being devoured. He sees the warriors already dead, before the battle even begins. Krishna tells him, "They are already slain by me. You are just the instrument." Sit with that for a second. The war was already decided. The outcome was written. Krishna wasn't guiding Arjuna toward victory. He was guiding Arjuna toward acceptance, toward understanding that his role wasn't to control the result, but to act with full integrity in the present moment. But what comes next is what changes everything about how you see Krishna. Because throughout the Mahabharata, Krishna doesn't just give wisdom. He schemes. He bends rules. He tells Yudhishthira to lie just once, to break Drona's spirit. He orchestrates Karna's death in a moment of vulnerability. He advises a blow below the belt that shatters Duryodhana's thigh, technically against the rules of war. People call these moments controversial. Some call them dark. I call them something else entirely. Here's my take, and I know this might not be what you expected. Krishna is not a god who rewards the righteous. He is a god who serves dharma, even when dharma is uncomfortable. There is a Sanskrit concept, lokasangraha, the welfare of the world. Krishna repeats it in the Gita. Everything I do for the holding together of the world. Not for individuals, not for the Pandavas specifically, for the cosmic order that makes existence possible. This is why the dark moments in Krishna's story don't disturb me. They clarify him. He didn't help Arjuna because Arjuna was good and Duryodhana was evil. The Mahabharata is far too honest for that kind of simple moral math. Karna was noble. Bhishma was righteous. Drona was honorable. And they all fought on the wrong side. Not because they were evil, but because they were bound by loyalty, by debt, by pride. Krishna saw past all of that. He saw the structure beneath the story. And this is what makes him genuinely unsettling as a deity. He is not a god you can bargain with. You cannot impress him with rituals alone. You cannot win his favor through status. He sees your karma, your dharma, the full arc of your soul, and he responds to that, not to your surface-level pain. The flute, the butter, the Ras Leela. That sweetness is real, but it exists alongside a mind that can hold the weight of cosmic time and still whisper to one shaking human being, "Get up. This is why you're here." That combination, infinite tenderness and absolute clarity, is to me the most sophisticated portrait of divinity ever written. We live in a world obsessed with outcomes, with winning, with being seen as the hero of our own story. Krishna's entire message cuts against that. Do the right thing. Let go of the result. Trust that Dharma, the deep structure of what is right, is larger than your fear, larger than your grief, larger than your attachment to how things should go. That's not passive. That's not weakness. That's the hardest thing a human being can do. And a god chose to deliver that message from a chariot seat, holding a whip, in the middle of a war. If this made you think, if something here landed, you know what to do. The algorithm knows when something moved you. Like subscribe and share this with someone who needs to hear it. Jai Shri Krishna. If Krishna's story moved something in you today, don't let that feeling disappear. Hit like, not for the algorithm, for the idea that these stories still matter, that a conversation on a battlefield 5,000 years ago still answers questions you're asking right now.
What if I told you that in Hinduism, the universe is not ruled by one god, but by a cosmic network of divine forces responsible for creation, preservation, destruction, wisdom, prosperity, and devotion? Today, we explore the 10 most powerful and revered deities in one of the world's oldest living religions. Part 1. The top 10 gods of Hinduism. Hinduism is one of the world's oldest living religions, with a tradition stretching back thousands of years. At its heart is a vast and complex understanding of the divine, not as a single, rigid figure, but as an infinite reality that manifests in countless forms, each representing a different aspect of existence, truth, and cosmic order. Here are the 10 most revered deities at the center of that tradition. Number 1. Brahma, the creator. Brahma is the first of the great Trimurti, the Hindu trinity of cosmic function. He is the originator of all existence, the divine architect who shaped the universe, the stars, the living world, and all conscious beings from the primordial void. He is depicted with 4 heads, each facing a cardinal direction, representing his complete awareness of all creation and his deep connection to the 4 sacred Vedas, the oldest scriptures of human civilization. Despite his supreme role, Brahma is rarely worshipped directly today, a fact that Hindu tradition explains through various myths about pride and the nature of creation itself. Number 2, Vishnu, the preserver. Where Brahma creates, Vishnu sustains. He is the great protector of cosmic order, the divine force that holds the universe together and ensures that dharma, righteous living and moral truth, is never permanently extinguished. Vishnu is known for his 10 avatars, or earthly incarnations, through which he descends into the world whenever evil grows powerful enough to threaten all of existence. His most celebrated avatars are Rama and Krishna, who each left behind legacies of wisdom, duty, and devotion that continue to shape hundreds of millions of lives today. Number 3, Shiva, the destroyer. Shiva is perhaps the most paradoxical and fascinating of all Hindu deities. He is both the destroyer and the renewer, the ascetic meditating alone on Mount Kailash, and the passionate husband of Parvati, the gentle father of Ganesha, and the fearsome dancer whose steps shake the cosmos. His destruction is not violence for its own sake. It is the necessary clearing away of what has decayed so that new life, new cycles, and new possibilities can emerge. Without Shiva, the universe would fill with the old and the broken, with no room for growth or transformation. Number 4, Krishna, the divine teacher. Krishna is one of the most beloved figures in all of world religion. As the 8th avatar of Vishnu, he is simultaneously a divine child full of mischief and wonder, a great warrior king, a devoted friend, and the supreme spiritual teacher. On the battlefield of Kurukshetra, when the warrior Arjuna was paralyzed by doubt and grief, it was Krishna who delivered the Bhagavad Gita, one of the most profound philosophical and spiritual texts ever composed. His teachings on duty, devotion, the nature of the soul, and the path to liberation remain as vital and relevant today as they were thousands of years ago. Number 5, Rama, the ideal man. Rama is the 7th avatar of Vishnu and the hero of the ancient epic Ramayana. He is revered not primarily for supernatural power, but for his unwavering commitment to righteousness in every dimension of life. As a son, a husband, a king, and a warrior. His long exile, his search for his beloved wife Sita, his alliance with Hanuman, and his eventual victory over the demon king Ravana form one of the most enduring stories in human history. Rama represents the possibility of living a fully human life with divine integrity. Number 6, Durga, the warrior goddess. Durga is the supreme manifestation of Shakti, the divine feminine energy that underlies all of existence. She was born from the combined power of all the gods when no single divine force was strong enough to defeat the demon Mahishasura, who had terrorized the 3 worlds. Riding a lion into battle with 10 arms bearing 10 weapons, she represents the truth that some forms of evil require not gentle persuasion, but fierce, courageous, and decisive action. She is both terrifying to the wicked and deeply compassionate to the devoted. Number 7, Lakshmi, goddess of abundance. Lakshmi is the divine consort of Vishnu and the goddess of wealth, beauty, prosperity, and spiritual grace. She emerged from the churning of the cosmic ocean, radiant and perfect, and chose Vishnu as her eternal partner. But Lakshmi's gifts are understood in Hinduism to be more than material. She represents the fullness of a life lived in alignment with Dharma. True prosperity in her tradition is not merely financial but encompasses health, love, wisdom, and inner peace. Number 8, Saraswati, goddess of wisdom. Saraswati is the divine patroness of all learning, creativity, language, music, and the arts. Pure white in her depictions, seated on a lotus, playing the veena with serene concentration, she embodies the idea that true knowledge is inseparable from beauty and discipline. She is the consort of Brahma, and together they represent the inseparable relationship between creation and the wisdom that gives creation meaning. Students, artists, writers, and musicians pray to her for clarity, inspiration, and the ability to express truth. Number 9, Ganesha, the remover of obstacles. With the head of an elephant and the gentle, rounded body of a beloved child, Ganesha is one of the most instantly recognizable and universally adored figures in Hinduism. Son of Shiva and Parvati, he is invoked at the beginning of every important undertaking: a journey, a business, a marriage, a creative work. He removes obstacles from the path of the devoted, but he is also said to place obstacles before those who proceed without wisdom or proper intention. He is the guardian of thresholds, the keeper of beginnings, and a symbol of the divine intellect that sees through all complexity. Number 10, Hanuman, the devoted warrior. Hanuman is the son of the wind god Vayu and one of the central heroes of the Ramayana. He possesses limitless physical strength, the ability to fly, to change his size at will, and to cross any distance. But what makes Hanuman truly extraordinary is not his power. It is his absolute, unconditional devotion to Rama. He is the supreme example of bhakti, the path of loving devotion, which Hinduism teaches is one of the most direct routes to the divine. When asked where Rama lives, Hanuman is said to have opened his own chest to reveal Rama and Sita dwelling within his heart.
No question cuts deeper. Where does power come from? Not the power of kings or armies, not the power of wealth or position, the real power. The kind that existed before the first star was born. The kind that will remain after the last star dies. The kind that cannot be given or taken, only recognized. Every ancient civilization tried to answer this question. The Greeks gave power to Zeus. The Norse gave it to Odin. The Egyptians gave it to Ra. They looked up at the sky, at thunder and lightning and the burning sun, and they said, "That is where power lives." But one civilization looked somewhere else entirely. They looked inward, and what they found was not a king on a throne, not a warrior with a sword, not a father figure in the clouds. What they found was a woman, not a woman in the human sense, though she takes human form when she chooses. Not a woman defined by any relationship, though she is mother, wife, daughter, and lover all at once. What they found was a force so fundamental, so vast, so alive, that calling it feminine was not a limitation. It was the highest truth they knew. The ancient seers of India called this force Shakti, and they said, with complete certainty, after lifetimes of meditation and thousands of years of inquiry, that Shakti is not a goddess among gods. Shakti is the energy that makes gods possible. Without her, Brahma cannot create. Without her, Vishnu cannot sustain. Without her, Shiva is not a destroyer. He is not even a meditator. Without Shakti, Shiva is Shava, a corpse. This is not a metaphor. This is the central cosmological statement of an entire civilization, and it changes everything about how we understand Hinduism and how we understand the world. This is the story of 10 goddesses who did not merely appear in Hinduism. They are Hinduism. They are its beginning, its structure, its living heartbeat, and its final destination. This is their story, and in a way, it has always been yours. Long before we can speak of any individual goddess, we must sit in a darkness that precedes everything. Not the darkness of night, which is only the absence of light. The darkness before light itself was born. The silence before the first vibration. The stillness before the first breath of the cosmos. Ancient Hindu cosmology does not begin with a god speaking the world into existence. It does not begin with a divine act of will or a cosmic decree. It begins with something far more mysterious, far more intimate, and far more difficult to understand with the rational mind. It begins with Adi Shakti. Adi means first, primordial, before all others. Shakti means power, energy, the capacity to act, to create, to move. But even these translations miss something essential. Because in Sanskrit, Shakti is not merely a noun describing something that exists. It is closer to a verb, an ongoing process of becoming, of pulsing, of living. To say Adi Shakti is to say the first aliveness. The Devi Bhagavata Purana, one of the most sacred texts in the Shakta tradition of Hinduism, describes what existed before creation with language that borders on poetry and philosophy simultaneously. It speaks of a state beyond time, beyond space, beyond the categories of existence and non-existence. In that state, there is no Brahma, no Vishnu, no Shiva. There are no worlds, no stars, no living beings. There is no karma, no dharma, no maya. There is only Adi Shakti, resting in herself. The texts describe her as nirguna, without qualities, without form, without limitation. She is pure consciousness that has not yet decided to become anything. She is potential so absolute that even infinity could not contain all she is capable of. And then, in a moment that the texts can describe but never fully explain, she moves. Not physically, not like a person standing up from a chair. Her movement is more subtle than that and more total. It is the movement of consciousness toward expression, of silence toward sound, of the infinite toward the finite. It is the primal yes, the moment pure being decides to become existence. From that movement, everything follows. The first thing to emerge from Adi Shakti's self-expression is not matter or energy in any physical sense. It is consciousness with direction. The capacity to know, the capacity to act, the capacity to love. These three become the seeds of Brahma, Vishnu, and Shiva, the great trinity that most people think of as the primary forces of Hindu cosmology. But notice what this means. The trinity does not produce Shakti. Shakti produces the trinity. This is perhaps the most radical statement in all of Hindu philosophy, and it is one that gets lost when people approach Hinduism, only through its most surface-level stories. People see Saraswati and call her Brahma's wife. They see Lakshmi and call her Vishnu's consort. They see Parvati and call her Shiva's beloved. And, in one sense, all of this is true, but in a deeper sense, it reverses the actual relationship. The goddess is not secondary to the god. She is his source, his power, his very capacity to be divine. Without Saraswati, Brahma has no creative intelligence. Without Lakshmi, Vishnu has no preserving grace. Without Parvati, without Shakti, Shiva is, as the texts say plainly, a corpse. The marriage of God and goddess in Hinduism is not a social arrangement. It is a cosmological statement. It says, consciousness and energy are inseparable. Awareness without power cannot act. Power without awareness cannot create. The universe exists in the sacred marriage of these two, and the female principle is not the lesser half. She is the half that makes the other half alive. Adi Shakti herself, in her primordial form, is rarely depicted with a fixed face or a specific iconography. She is described as light beyond light, as the darkness that contains all potential, as the sound from which all mantras are born, as the ground from which all existence grows. She is Mahamaya, the great illusion, not in the sense of being false, but in the sense of being the creative power that makes the infinite appear finite, the formless appear formed, the one appear as many. This is her first gift to existence, the world itself, and from this vast, formless, primordial source, three rivers of divine power begin to flow. Each river takes a form. Each form takes a name. Each name becomes a goddess, and each goddess shapes a dimension of reality so fundamental that without her, that dimension simply ceases to function. The first river flows toward knowledge, toward language, toward the ordering of chaos into meaning. It becomes Saraswati. The second river flows toward abundance, toward grace, toward the sustaining warmth that keeps life choosing itself over death. It becomes Lakshmi. The third river flows toward transformation, toward the dissolution of what is finished, toward the fierce love that refuses to let the universe stagnate. It becomes Kali, or, in her more accessible form, Durga. These three are called the Tridevi, the three goddesses who correspond to the three cosmic functions of creation, preservation, and dissolution. They are not separate beings who happen to share similar portfolios. They are three faces of one reality. The way white light becomes red, blue, and yellow when it passes through a prism, and the reality they are three faces is Adi Shakti herself. Let us turn now to Saraswati. Because in a very real sense, before anything else in Hinduism could be spoken, written, or transmitted, Saraswati had to exist. She is the goddess of knowledge, of language, of music, of the arts, of wisdom, and of the sacred sciences. She is depicted in white. White sari, white skin, seated on a white lotus, or sometimes on a white swan. She holds a veena, the ancient stringed instrument, in two of her four hands. In another hand she holds a book, the Vedas, the most sacred scriptures of Hinduism. In the fourth hand she holds a string of prayer beads representing spiritual discipline. Every element of her iconography is a philosophical statement. White is the color that contains all other colors. To be dressed in white is to be the source from which all differentiation emerges. The lotus she sits on rises from muddy water, but remains unstained. Saraswati's wisdom arises from the material world but is not corrupted by it. The swan is considered in Hindu tradition to have a remarkable quality. When offered a mixture of milk and water, a swan can separate the two and drink only the milk. This is called viveka, discernment, the capacity to separate truth from illusion, substance from noise, wisdom from information. Saraswati does not just represent knowledge. She represents the right kind of knowledge, held in the right way for the right purpose. Her role in Hindu history is almost impossible to overstate. She's credited, in the mythological sense that goes beyond literal biography, with the gift of Sanskrit itself. And this matters more than it might initially appear. Sanskrit is not simply a language. Every scholar who has studied it, from ancient Indian grammarians to modern linguists, has noted its extraordinary precision, its almost mathematical structure, its capacity to contain layers of meaning in a single word that would require paragraphs in other languages. The ancient Indians believed that Sanskrit was not invented, but revealed, that it was the language in which consciousness itself thinks, and that Saraswati was the one who gave humanity access to it. From Sanskrit came the Vedas, the oldest religious texts in continuous use anywhere on Earth. The Rig Veda contains hymns that scholars date to approximately 1500 BCE or earlier, making them older than the Hebrew Bible, older than the Homeric epics, older than virtually everything that survives from the ancient world. These hymns were preserved not in writing initially, but in memory, passed from teacher to student across hundreds of generations, with a precision that modern scholars find extraordinary. The preservation of the Vedas is itself a kind of miracle, and Hindu tradition attributes that preservation to the grace of Saraswati. From the Vedas came the Upanishads, the philosophical texts that contain some of the most sophisticated thinking about consciousness, reality, identity, and liberation ever produced by human minds. The question, "Who am I?" is pursued in the Upanishads with a depth and rigor that modern philosophy is still working to match. From the Upanishads came the 6 schools of Hindu philosophy: Nyaya, Vaisheshika, Samkhya, Yoga, Mimamsa, and Vedanta, each a complete intellectual tradition with its own logic, metaphysics, and practice. All of this, every word, every verse, every philosophical argument, every devotional poem, lives under the blessing of Saraswati. But she is not only for the learned. Every child in India, even today, offers a prayer to Saraswati before an examination. Every musician, before performing, touches their instrument to their forehead and remembers her. Every writer, before putting words to paper, invokes her. She's the patron of students, of teachers, of artists, of scientists, of seekers of all kinds. Because Saraswati understands something that purely intellectual traditions sometimes forget. Wisdom is not just about accumulating information. It is about developing the inner instrument, the mind, the heart, the attention that can receive truth when it arrives. The veena she plays is not just a musical instrument. It is a metaphor for the human being, an instrument that produces beauty only when it is properly tuned, properly held, and played with both skill and love. She is also associated with rivers, and the ancient Saraswati River, mentioned repeatedly in the Rig Veda as one of the most sacred rivers in India, is named for her. Modern satellite imagery and geological research have actually confirmed the existence of a large ancient river in the region where the Vedic civilization flourished, a river that dried up thousands of years ago. The fact that an ancient civilization named their most sacred river after the goddess of knowledge tells us something profound about what they valued most. For the ancient Indians, knowledge was not just practical. It was not just about building better tools or winning wars. Knowledge was sacred. The act of learning was an act of devotion. The ability to speak clearly, to think precisely, to appreciate beauty, to understand the cosmos. These were not human achievements to be proud of. They were gifts from Saraswati to be received with humility. This is a worldview that changed everything about how Hinduism developed. It is why the tradition produced not just priests and warriors, but philosophers and mathematicians and musicians and poets. It is why a civilization that valued Saraswati could simultaneously produce the Vedas and the game of chess, algebra, and classical dance, grammar and surgery. Knowledge in all its forms was considered divine, and its source was a woman in white, seated on a lotus, playing a stringed instrument at the edge of a sacred river. If Saraswati is the goddess who gives existence meaning through knowledge, then Lakshmi is the goddess who makes existence beautiful through grace. She is one of the most beloved figures in all of Hinduism, not because she represents power or wisdom or even love in the romantic sense, but because she represents something every living being needs and secretly fears losing: abundance. Not wealth in the narrow sense of money, though she is certainly the goddess of material prosperity. Abundance in the full sense. The feeling that life is generous, that the universe is not hostile, that there is enough, that you are enough, that grace is available to all who open themselves to it. Her iconography is immediately recognizable and immediately joyful. She's depicted in red, the color of life, of fire, of auspiciousness. She sits or stands on a fully open lotus, meaning she has not closed herself against the world, but opens completely to it. Gold coins pour from one of her hands, a constant, never-ending flow of abundance. Two of her hands hold lotuses, connecting her to purity and spiritual unfolding. She is flanked by elephants who pour water over her, the ancient Indian symbol of royal consecration, of being blessed by the highest powers. Everything about her image says, the universe wants to give. Her relationship with Vishnu, the great preserver of cosmic order, is one of the most celebrated divine romances in all of Hindu mythology. But it is important to understand this relationship correctly, because it is often reduced to a conventional depiction of a devoted wife following her husband. The reality is far more complex and far more interesting. Lakshmi is portrayed throughout the texts as a fundamentally free being. She does not simply belong to Vishnu, she chooses him again and again across cosmic ages. And crucially, her presence is not guaranteed. The texts describe multiple occasions where Lakshmi leaves, where she withdraws her grace because the one who should have been caring for the world has become careless or arrogant or inattentive. One of the most famous such stories involves the sage Durvasa, known throughout Hindu mythology for his extraordinary spiritual power and his equally extraordinary temper. Durvasa obtained a garland of flowers from a celestial nymph, flowers that had been blessed, flowers carrying the essence of divine grace. He offered this garland to Indra, the king of the gods. Indra, in a moment of casual arrogance, placed the garland on his elephant's trunk. The elephant tossed it to the ground. Durvasa was incensed. But more importantly, Lakshmi was insulted. She withdrew, and when Lakshmi left, the consequences were immediate and total. The gods, who had been sustaining the three worlds through their cosmic functions, began to lose their power. Crops failed, devotion declined. The entire cosmic order began to unravel because the grace that had been sustaining it was gone. This story is not merely mythology. It is a philosophical statement about the nature of prosperity and grace. Lakshmi cannot be hoarded. She cannot be taken for granted. She cannot be treated as a possession or a right. She is, by her very nature, a blessing that must be actively honored, or she moves on. The universe is abundant, but abundance is not unconditional. It flows toward consciousness that has cultivated the capacity to receive and the wisdom to be grateful. This is why Hindu tradition, even today, treats wealth with a reverence that confuses some modern observers. The business communities of India have historically maintained a practice of regular puja, worship, of their account books, their tools, their instruments of livelihood. Not because money is God, but because the grace that flows through material forms is sacred and must be honored as such. On the festival of Diwali, entire cities light up with lamps and fireworks and sweets, primarily in honor of Lakshmi, welcoming her into homes and hearts and businesses for the coming year. But perhaps the most profound dimension of Lakshmi's meaning goes deeper than prosperity or even grace. It points toward a truth about the nature of reality itself. In Hindu cosmology, Vishnu descends to earth in various forms, his avatars, whenever the cosmic order is threatened. He becomes Rama to defeat Ravana. He becomes Krishna to guide the Pandavas and speak the Bhagavad Gita. And every time he descends, Lakshmi descends with him. She becomes Sita when he is Rama. She becomes Rukmini, and some traditions say Radha, when he is Krishna. This pattern tells us something extraordinary. It says that wherever the divine descends into the world to restore order and beauty, grace always accompanies it. Vishnu without Lakshmi is power without love, order without joy, truth without beauty. The two must always come together. The universe is not just maintained by a cosmic principle of order. It is maintained by the love that makes order worth having. Lakshmi is that love made visible. Now we must speak of fire, because if Saraswati represents the luminous intelligence at the heart of Hinduism, and Lakshmi represents its overflowing grace, then Durga and Kali represent something that is harder for the comfortable mind to accept, but that the tradition insists is equally sacred. The truth that love, in its fullest form, is not soft, that the universe in its deepest wisdom is not gentle, that there is a kind of compassion that looks like wrath, a kind of grace that looks like destruction, a kind of mother that does not protect you from pain but destroys the very source of your suffering, roots and all, with her own hands. This is Durga. This is Kali. This is the goddess in her warrior form, and her story begins with a failure. The gods failed. This is a remarkable thing for a religious tradition to admit about its own divinities. But Hinduism, to its enduring credit, does not pretend that the forces of cosmic good are invincible. It tells stories in which the gods lose, in which evil is powerful enough to conquer heaven, in which the great Trinity, Brahma, Vishnu, Shiva, is insufficient to the task before them. The story of Durga begins with a demon named Mahishasura. His name means buffalo demon, and he is depicted as being able to shift between human and buffalo form at will. What makes him extraordinary and extraordinarily dangerous is not just his physical power, which is immense, but his spiritual preparation. He has performed austerities so severe for so long with such total commitment that Brahma himself appeared before him and offered him a boon. Mahishasura asked for a very specific kind of immortality. He could not be killed by any god, any demon, any man, any divine weapon. He listed every category of being he could imagine, and that list, crucially, did not include women. Either through arrogance or oversight, he did not consider that a woman could be a threat. Armed with this boon, he took his armies to the heavens and waged war against the gods. The battle lasted 100 years. And then it was over. The gods were defeated, driven from their own realm, stripped of their positions, their powers diminished by Mahishasura's conquest. What followed was an act of divine collaboration, unlike anything else in Hindu mythology. The gods, all of them, including the Great Trinity, gathered together in a state of simultaneous fury and recognition. Their individual powers were insufficient. But what if those powers were not divided? What if every spark of divine energy in the cosmos was directed at a single point, a single form, a single purpose? From that gathering of divine fire, a light emerged, and from that light a form took shape. A woman, beautiful beyond description, terrible beyond comprehension. Her face carried the beauty of Shiva, the grace of Vishnu, the creative brilliance of Brahma. Her eyes carried the fire of Agni. Her arms carried the speed of Vayu, the wind. Her feet carried the solidity of the earth itself. The gods gave her their weapons. Shiva gave her his trident. Vishnu gave her his discus. Indra gave her his thunderbolt. Yama gave her his staff. Varuna gave her his noose. Every god contributed, and she took each weapon in a new pair of arms, until she had 18 arms, 18 weapons, 18 dimensions of divine power simultaneously available to her. She rode a lion, the king of animals, the symbol of royal courage, the one creature that does not flee from anything. And she smiled. This is Durga. Her very name means she who is difficult to approach, or she who removes difficulties. The name contains both the terror and the promise. She is difficult to face because she carries the full force of the cosmos. She removes difficulties because she is on your side. The battle that followed is described in the Devi Mahatmya, one of the most important texts in the Shakta tradition, believed to have been composed between the 4th and 7th centuries CE, though the traditions it encodes are far older. The Devi Mahatmya is not just a mythological narrative. It is a manual for understanding the nature of the divine feminine and how she operates in the cosmos and in the human psyche. Mahishasura sent his armies first. They were destroyed. He sent his generals, Chikshura, Chamara, Udagra, and others, each commanding tens of thousands of demon soldiers. They were destroyed. He shapeshifted between forms, from human to buffalo, from buffalo to lion, from lion to elephant, testing whether any of his transformations could resist her. None could. In his final form, the great buffalo demon fell to the goddess's trident. His blood poured out, and with it, the bondage of the 3 worlds was broken. But something happened during the battle that Durga herself did not fully control. As the fighting intensified, as demon blood was spilled and demon armies fell, a transformation began to occur within Durga herself. Her rage, the cosmic rage of a universe that had been wronged, the accumulated fury of all divine power directed at a single target, began to express itself in a new form. From Durga's forehead, from the space between her eyebrows where the third eye of higher consciousness is said to reside, a new being emerged, dark, absolutely dark, like the night sky that has no stars, wild hair like storm clouds, wearing nothing but a garland of skulls, eyes red with battle, tongue thrust out, dripping with demon blood, 3 eyes burning with a ferocious light. This was Kali. Her name comes from the Sanskrit word Kala, meaning time. She is time made visible. She is the force that nothing survives, the force before which every structure, every form, every ego eventually crumbles. She does not merely kill, she devours. She consumes what is finished, what is false, what is holding you back. The battle continued. Kali fought with a freedom and a ferocity that even Durga had not. She consumed demons whole. She drank their blood before it could touch the ground, because there was a demon named Raktabija who had been granted the boon that every drop of his blood that fell to earth would produce a new Raktabija, an army from blood, an infinite self-reproduction of evil. The other goddesses and gods could not fight Raktabija. Every wound made things worse. Every drop of blood multiplied the enemy. Kali could. She stretched out her tongue, that great, wide, all-consuming tongue, and drank. Every drop, every single drop of Raktabija's blood she consumed before it could touch the earth. She killed him again and again until there was nothing left of him but the original, and the original she devoured entirely. But then a new problem arose. Having consumed so much blood, having been saturated with the energy of cosmic combat, Kali could not stop. She danced, a terrible dance of destruction, and with each footstep, the earth trembled. Universes quaked. Even the gods who had called upon her were afraid. Only Shiva understood what was needed. He did not fight her. He did not order her to stop. He lay down on the ground, completely vulnerable, completely still, in her path. She stepped on him, and in that moment, recognition stopped her. She looked down and saw that she was standing on her own husband, her own other half. Her tongue came out. In the iconography, this is the universal gesture of oops, of sudden awareness, of the return of self-consciousness after a moment of total absorption. She stopped. This image, Kali standing on Shiva, tongue out, eyes wide, is one of the most powerful and most misunderstood images In all of Hinduism, to the uninitiated eye, it looks like domination, like a goddess defeating a god. But the tradition reads it differently. It reads it as a perfect metaphor for the relationship between consciousness and energy, between awareness and power. Shakti, energy, power, the active principle, rests upon Shiva, pure consciousness, awareness itself, the witness. Without Shiva beneath her, Kali has no ground. Without Kali on top of him, Shiva has no expression. The image is not about conflict, it is about completion. Kali herself has been, throughout Hindu history, the most misunderstood and the most liberating of all the goddesses. Colonial-era scholars looked at her iconography, skulls, blood, dark skin, wild hair, weapons, and saw only horror. They missed the fact that the skulls around her neck represent the Sanskrit alphabet. She carries the seed syllables of all language, all knowledge, all possible expression. They missed the fact that her darkness is not threatening but total, like the darkness of the infinite sky that holds all stars. They missed the fact that her devotees experienced in her presence not terror, but an extraordinary freedom, the freedom that comes from encountering a love so absolute that it has no need to pretend. Kali does not pretend. She shows you what is real. She does not spare you from the truth of impermanence, of death, of transformation. But her devotees say, and mystics like Ramakrishna Paramahamsa, who spent a lifetime in her presence, confirmed that inside that terrible truth is an indescribable tenderness, that she who destroys is also she who liberates, that what she takes from you is only what was imprisoning you. The great Saint Ramakrishna used to say that Kali called him her son, that, in her presence, he experienced a love more complete than anything human love could offer, that her darkness was not the darkness of death, but the darkness of the womb, the place where transformation happens before the light is ready. This is the warrior face of the goddess. This is the love that will not let you remain comfortable in your smallness. This is the grace that burns. From the fire of Kali, we turn now to the mountains, to a young woman sitting alone in the snow, in the highest peaks of the Himalayas, in a posture of absolute stillness, surrounded by nothing but wind and stone and the distant thunder of avalanches. She has been sitting there for a very long time. Her name is Parvati. She is the daughter of the mountain, Himavan, king of the Himalayas, and his wife, Mena. She is not a warrior goddess. She does not have 18 arms or a lion to ride. She is, by all appearances, simply a young woman deeply in love with a god who does not seem to notice her. That god is Shiva. Shiva, in the period of Parvati's birth, had lost his first wife, Sati, who was, in the deepest theological sense, the same soul as Parvati, reborn with a new name and a new lineage. Sati had immolated herself in sacred fire after her father. Daksha had publicly disrespected Shiva, whom he considered an unworthy husband for his daughter. Unable to bear the humiliation of her husband being degraded, and unable to continue living in a body born of a father whose actions she could not defend, Sati had walked into the sacrificial fire. Shiva's grief at Sati's death had become something cosmic. He had picked up her body and wandered the universe with it, unable to set it down, unable to move forward into a universe without her. Other gods had watched, afraid of what Shiva's unhinged grief might do to the fabric of existence. Finally, Vishnu had used his discus to cut Sati's body into pieces, 51 pieces according to the texts, each of which fell to earth and became a sacred site, a Shakti Pitha, a seat of the goddess's power. Shiva had retreated then into the deepest meditation imaginable, not the meditation of a peaceful yogi seeking inner calm, but the meditation of a being so shattered by loss that only the absolute stillness of pure consciousness could hold him together. He sat in the ashes of the dead, in the cremation grounds, in the coldest peaks of the mountains. He meditated on the nature of existence with an intensity that made the gods nervous. Because Shiva, in meditation, is the universe in suspension. His energy, his power, his creative and destructive force. All of it turned inward. Nothing moving outward, nothing creating, nothing dissolving, just the pure ferocious stillness of the absolute. And then came the problem. A demon named Tarakasura, armed with a boon similar to Mahishasura's, had been causing destruction throughout the cosmos. The gods had investigated how he could be defeated and had found a terrible answer. Only a son of Shiva could kill Tarakasura. Only a being born of the union of Shiva's awakened energy with a worthy partner could generate the power needed. But Shiva was lost in grief, lost in meditation. The gods needed someone who could reach him, someone who could draw his consciousness back toward the world, back toward love, back toward the possibility of engagement. They turned to Parvati. She had been born with this purpose, though she was not aware of it yet. What she was aware of was simpler and more complete. She loved Shiva, not with the possessive, fearful love that seeks security, but with the total, unreserved love that seeks only the beloved's presence. She began her courtship in the most natural way. By going to where he was, she took up residence on the mountain where he meditated. She became his attendant, bringing flowers, clearing away leaves, making his space beautiful. Day after day she came. Day after day, Shiva did not acknowledge her. The gods, watching anxiously, made a mistake. They sent Kama, the god of desire, the Hindu equivalent of Eros, to shoot one of his flower arrows at Shiva, hoping to awaken his romantic interest in Parvati. Kama appeared, drew his bow, and released his arrow. Shiva's third eye opened, a beam of fire. Kama was incinerated, instantly, completely, reduced to ash. The god of desire himself could not reach Shiva. This was a statement of extraordinary significance. Shiva could not be manipulated into love. There is a place on this earth where the ancient and the alive exist in the same. He could not be moved by desire, by beauty, by the same forces that move ordinary beings. If Parvati was to reach him, she would have to become something more than beautiful. She would have to become his equal. She understood this. What followed is one of the most striking stories in Hindu mythology, not because of any dramatic battles or cosmic events, but because of what it reveals about the nature of spiritual discipline and the nature of love. Parvati sent away her attendants. She removed her jewelry and her fine clothes. She took up residence alone in the mountains, not in a comfortable hermitage, but exposed to the elements. Sitting in the open air in the posture of meditation, she fasted. In summer, she sat surrounded by fires, adding heat to heat. In winter, she sat in icy water. In the monsoon, she sat in the open rain, without shelter. She performed tapas, austerities. The word comes from the Sanskrit root meaning heat or fire, and the tradition held that spiritual discipline generates a kind of internal fire that burns away impurity, burns away the limitations of the small self, and reveals the pure consciousness within. Parvati burned for years. The texts speak of thousands of years, though time in these stories is not literal but proportional. It is a way of saying as long as it took, she did it. Her austerities became so intense that they began to disturb the cosmos. The heat she was generating through her discipline was affecting the balance of the universe. Even Brahma took notice. He appeared before her and offered her a boon. She asked for one thing only: Shiva as her husband. Brahma went to Shiva, and Shiva, who had actually been watching Parvati's tapas, who had in fact been moved by a love he was not ready to express, agreed to the marriage. But before he did, he tested her. He appeared before her in disguise as a young Brahmin student and spent hours insulting Shiva, describing all his flaws, his bizarre behavior, his association with corpses and ash and wild animals and outcasts. He gave her every reason to abandon her pursuit. She didn't waver. She defended Shiva with perfect calm and perfect love. the disguise dissolved. Shiva stood before her in his full form. Their wedding is described in Hindu texts with a joy that is almost overwhelming. Every deity attended. The mountains themselves celebrated. The rivers danced. And in the marriage of Shiva and Parvati, the texts tell us, the cosmos was stabilized in a new and deeper way, because what had been divided was now whole. Consciousness and Shakti, awareness and power, the meditating absolute and the creative feminine force were joined again. Breath. From their union was born Kartikeya, the warrior son who defeated Tarakasura as the gods had needed, and later Ganesha, the elephant-headed god who removes obstacles, who blesses beginnings, who sits at every threshold and every doorway in the Hindu world. But Parvati's significance is not only as mother and wife. Her real significance is as a model of the spiritual path. The story of her tapas is not a story about a woman pining for a man. It is a story about the soul's pursuit of the absolute. In Hindu philosophy, Shiva represents pure consciousness, the ultimate reality that underlies all appearances. The soul, represented by Parvati, must undertake its own tapas, its own burning, its own patient, fierce, committed practice to come into union with that consciousness. No desire can reach it. No manipulation can move it. Only genuine transformation, the kind that comes from sustained practice, can create the possibility of union. Parvati becomes, through this story, the patron of every seeker who has ever sat in meditation through difficulty, who has ever continued the practice when it seemed pointless, who has ever loved something too vast to be grasped, but too real to be abandoned. She is the love that does the work. There is a dimension of love in Hindu thought that goes beyond even the devoted, transformative love of Parvati. It is a love that cannot be institutionalized, cannot be formalized, cannot be fully explained in the language of duty or relationship or cosmic function. It is the love of Radha for Krishna. And it is considered, in the Bhakti tradition, that grew to become one of Hinduism's most influential spiritual movements, to be the highest expression of the human relationship with the divine. To understand why, we need to understand Krishna. Not the philosophical Krishna of the Bhagavad Gita, though that Krishna is also real and also essential, but the Krishna of Vrindavan, the young Krishna, the cowherd Krishna, the Krishna who grows up among the simple communities of the Yamuna River Valley, surrounded by cowherds and milkmaids, forests and riverbanks, and the smell of jasmine and the sound of flutes. This Krishna performs miracles, lifting the mountain Govardhana on his little finger to shelter his community from Indra's storms, dancing on the poisonous serpent Kaliya in the Yamuna, defeating demons sent to kill him throughout his childhood. He is clearly divine, but what makes the stories of this period so extraordinary and so endlessly beloved is that he is also completely human in his relationships, playful, mischievous, loving, present. Among all the gopis, the milkmaids who become devoted to him, there is one whose relationship with him transcends all others: Radha. She's older than him. She's sometimes described as already married to another man. She's not a queen or a princess. She has no special status, no special power, nothing that would mark her out as extraordinary to an outside observer. But she loves Krishna with a totality that the universe recognizes. The texts that explore Radha and Krishna, the Gita Govinda of the 12th century poet Jayadeva, the devotional poetry of Mirabai and Surdas, the Brahma Vaivarta Purana, all circle around the same astonishing claim: that Krishna, who holds the universe in his flute's melody, who is the source of all avatars, who speaks the most profound spiritual philosophy ever recorded, this Krishna is moved by Radha. This Krishna, in the language of devotional poetry, weeps when Radha is absent, longs for her, considers himself incomplete without her. In the theological interpretation of the Vaishnava tradition, particularly in the system developed by the 16th century Saint Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and his successors, Radha is not a separate being from Krishna. She is his Hladini Shakti, his bliss-giving power. She is the part of the divine that experiences its own nature as joy. Without Radha, Krishna exists but does not experience himself. Without Krishna, Radha loves but has no object for that love. Together, they represent the completeness of divine experience, the existence of love and its object, the giver of joy, and the one who receives it and returns it and multiplies it into infinity. The love of Radha for Krishna became, in Hindu history, the model for bhakti, devotional love as a spiritual path. The premise of bhakti is radical in its simplicity, that love itself, when directed at the divine, is sufficient for liberation. You do not need elaborate rituals. You do not need mastery of complex philosophy. You do not need years of austere meditation. You need only to love the way Radha loved, completely, without reservation, without calculation, without any agenda except the joy of the beloved's presence. This teaching, when it took hold in medieval India, became a revolution. The Bhakti movement, which flourished roughly between the 7th and 17th centuries CE, produced some of the most beautiful poetry, music, and philosophy in Indian history. It was also, by the standards of its time, radically egalitarian. The great Bhakti saints came from every level of society. There were Brahmins like Ramanuja and Madhva, but also lower caste devotees like Namdev, a tailor, and Chochamela, an untouchable. There was Mirabai, a Rajput princess who abandoned royal life to wander as a devotee of Krishna. There was Andal, a young woman whose devotional poems to Vishnu are still recited daily in South Indian temples. All of them, in their different ways, understood Radha. They understood that the path of love is not a lesser path, that devotion is not an alternative to wisdom but its highest expression, that when you love completely, your love itself becomes a vehicle for truth. Radha, who appears in no Vedic text, who is not mentioned in the Mahabharata, who arrives in Hindu consciousness relatively late compared to figures like Saraswati or Lakshmi, Radha has become, across the centuries, one of the most beloved figures in all of Hinduism. Her story has inspired painters, poets, dancers, and musicians across 1,000 years. The image of Radha and Krishna together, Radha Krishna, always her name first, is the most universally recognized symbol of divine love in the Hindu world. She did not have cosmic power. She did not win battles or restore cosmic order. She simply loved, completely and without condition. And the universe remembered. Now we must enter a darkness of a different kind. Not the cosmic darkness of Kali, not the darkness of grief, but the darkness of injustice, the specific burning darkness that descends when the world looks at suffering and looks away. This is the darkness of the court of Hastinapura, and the woman standing in it, alone, is Draupadi. She is the daughter of fire. Literally, in the mythological telling, she was born from a sacrificial fire that her father, King Drupada, had conducted with the specific purpose of producing children who could avenge him against the teacher Drona. She emerges from the sacred fire, fully grown, radiantly beautiful, destined for extraordinary things. Her name at birth is Krishna, the Dark One, feminine form of Krishna's name, indicating perhaps that her story and Krishna's story are linked in ways that will only become clear over time. Her Swayamvara, the ceremony at which she chooses her husband, is one of the most famous scenes in the Mahabharata. The challenge was extraordinary. To string a massive bow and use it to hit a rotating fish target while looking only at its reflection in water. Princes from across the known world failed. Arjuna, in disguise among a group of Brahmins, succeeded. And Draupadi was married to all 5 Pandava brothers through a series of circumstances involving their mother Kunti's inadvertent command that whatever they brought home must be shared equally. 5 husbands, each extraordinary, each a source of both love and complication. She is the center around which the entire Pandava household organizes itself. When the Pandavas lose everything in a rigged game of dice to their Kaurava cousins, their kingdom, their wealth, their freedom, and finally, Draupadi herself. What follows is one of the defining moments in Hindu mythology. Draupadi is dragged into the royal court by her hair. She is in a single garment, having just emerged from bathing. She stands before the entire assembly, the blind king Dhritarashtra, the patriarch Bhishma, the elders, the kings, the warriors, and she is publicly humiliated with the intent to strip her bare. The man who has ordered this, Dushasana, begins to pull at her garment, and something remarkable happens in this moment that defines both the story and the goddess. Draupadi calls out to Krishna, not to her 5 husbands, who sit with their heads bowed, not to the elders, who cannot seem to move themselves to act, not to the kings who are complicit in their silence. She calls to Krishna, and Krishna responds, not visibly, not in bodily form, but through a miracle that Hindu theology points to again and again. Her garment cannot be removed. Every length of cloth that Dushasana pulls free is replaced by another. He pulls and pulls until he is exhausted, and Draupadi's modesty is intact. But the story does not end there. Because Draupadi, unlike many who receive miraculous rescue, does not simply accept her survival with gratitude and move on. She asks a question. She asks it in front of everyone. She asks it to the entire assembly, to every king, every elder, every self-professed upholder of Dharma who sat and watched or actively participated in her humiliation. She asks, "Was I legitimately staked in that game? Can a man whose freedom was already lost stake another person? If the Pandavas had already lost themselves, did they have the right to stake me?" It is a legal question, a philosophical question, a question about the nature of Dharma, about the rights of persons, about the limits of what men can do with women in the name of social convention. Nobody answers her. Not the great Bhishma, who has answers for everything else, not the lawyers, not the philosophers, not the kings. The silence in that court is the silence of a civilization confronting an uncomfortable truth about itself. Draupadi's question echoes through the rest of the Mahabharata like a wound that will not heal. It drives the war, the Kurukshetra war, 18 days of battle that kills millions, that destroys the old world and ushers in the Kali Yuga, the final age, is traced directly back to this moment, the humiliation of Draupadi. The question nobody answered. Her story became, in Hindu history, one of the foundational texts for thinking about Dharma, justice, and the rights of women. Theologians and philosophers across centuries have wrestled with the question she raised. Courts of justice in ancient India are said to have kept her story in mind as a standard against which their own actions could be measured. And there is something more to say about Draupadi that the stories contain but require careful attention to see. She's not merely a victim. She's not merely a symbol of injustice. She's a person of extraordinary intelligence, extraordinary dignity, and extraordinary spiritual courage. Throughout the Pandavas' 13 years of exile, 12 years in the forest and 1 year in hiding, she is the one who keeps their purpose clear. She is the one who does not let them forget what was done to them, not out of vengeance but out of clarity about Dharma. She is the one who, when Yudhishthira's philosophical acceptance of their situation risks becoming passive resignation, reminds him that Dharma requires action as well as acceptance. She is, in many regional Hindu traditions, worshipped as a goddess in her own right. In Tamil Nadu and other parts of South India, Draupadi Amman temples exist where she is revered as a fierce, protective deity, a goddess of courage and justice, a protector of those who have been wronged and had no recourse. Her story asks, across the centuries, the question that justice always asks. When you see this, what do you do? We began this story with the cosmos, with Adi Shakti breathing existence into being, with the vast primordial force that underlies all that is. And through the lives of these extraordinary beings, we have moved through wisdom and grace, through war and devotion, through love and justice. Now we come to water, to Ganga. She is the holiest river in the world to approximately 1 billion people. She flows from the Gangotri Glacier in the Himalayas, across the northern plains of India, and into the Bay of Bengal, a journey of over 2,500 kilometers. More than 400 million people live in her watershed. More prayers have been offered at her banks. More ashes of the departed have been immersed in her waters. More sacred festivals have been celebrated along her shores than perhaps anywhere else on earth. She is worshipped not simply as a river, but as a goddess, and her story of descent to earth is one of the most beautiful in all of Hindu mythology. Before Ganga came to earth, she flowed only in the heavens. The celestial Ganga was described as so pure, so powerful, so full of divine grace that she was essentially a concentrated form of liberation. To touch her was to be freed from all karma, to be purified of all accumulated sin, to be set on the immediate path to moksha. But she was beyond human reach. A king named Bhagiratha, whose name literally means the one who did the impossible, wanted to bring her down. The reason was this. His ancestors, 60,000 princes of the Sagara dynasty, had been burned to ash by the fire of the sage Kapila's wrath. Their souls were wandering, unable to move on, unable to find rest. According to the tradition, the only thing that could liberate them was the touch of the Ganga. Bhagiratha performed austerities of extraordinary intensity and duration. He stood on one leg for thousands of years, subsisting only on air, meditating with such concentrated purpose that even the gods were moved. Finally, Brahma appeared and told him that, yes, he would ask Ganga to descend. But there was a problem. Ganga's celestial current was so powerful, so overwhelming, that if she fell directly from the heavens to the earth, the impact would be catastrophic. The earth could not contain her. She would flood everything, fracture the ground, destroy the very civilization that Bhagiratha was trying to help. There was only one being whose power was sufficient to receive her, only one who could contain the divine flood without being overwhelmed by it, only one whose presence was so absolute that even the Ganga's force would be held within it. Shiva agreed to receive her. He stood in the Himalayas, the same mountains where he had meditated since Sati's death, where Parvati had performed her tapas, where the highest peaks pierced the boundary between earth and sky, and he tilted his head back. Ganga descended. She fell into the ocean of Shiva's matted hair, the jata, that wild mass of dreadlocked locks that the iconography always shows, piled high on Shiva's head. And in those infinite tangles, she wandered, flowed through, found 1,000 paths, was slowed, was held, was filtered through the divine consciousness of the one who contains everything without being defined by anything. After a long time, after years, the texts say, she found her way out and descended to earth in 7 streams, gentle enough for the earth to receive, pure enough to carry liberation in her touch. Bhagiratha led her southward to the sea, and where her waters touched the ash of his ancestors, they were liberated. Ganga, in Hindu worship, carries this meaning to this day. Her water is collected in copper vessels and kept in homes because it is believed to remain pure for extraordinarily long periods, a belief that modern microbiological research has actually found some support for, identifying bacteriophages in the river that give it unusual, purifying properties. What the Hindu world has always understood about the Ganga is something more intimate than water chemistry. She is grace made available. She is the divine force that, because of one person's impossible dedication, came close enough to touch. She is the answer to the human longing for purification, not the punishing purification of self-condemnation, but the gentle, absolute purification that comes when something so much larger than your errors touches you and washes them away. This is why hundreds of thousands of people enter her waters at dawn, why the dying are carried to her banks, why the ashes of the dead are immersed in her flow. Not because of superstition, but because of a profound understanding. carried across thousands of years that there are forces in this universe whose nature is to cleanse, to liberate, to make new. Ganga is one of those forces, and she came to Earth because one person believed the impossible was worth attempting. We have traveled far, from the darkness before creation, to the mountains and rivers and courts and battlefields of a civilization's longest memory. We have met 10 goddesses, or perhaps we have met 10 faces of one goddess, 10 expressions of one inexhaustible reality. Hinduism, at its best, has always known this. That is why the oldest civilization still living on Earth placed women at the center of the divine, not as a social statement, not as a political position, as the deepest truth they could find. Imagine a universe where creation doesn't begin with a single moment, but cycles endlessly through birth, death, and rebirth, where gods dream worlds into existence and the entire cosmos floats on an infinite ocean of milk, where time itself is just a breath of the divine. This isn't fantasy. This is the Hindu story of creation, one of the oldest and most mind-bending origin stories ever conceived. And what it reveals about existence will challenge everything you thought you knew about how we got here. Because in this story, there is no beginning, there is no end, there is only the eternal dance of creation and destruction, spinning forever in the mind of God. Before anything existed, there was nothing. Not darkness, not emptiness, not even the concept of nothingness itself. The ancient Hindu texts, the Vedas, describe this state as beyond human comprehension, a reality where existence and non-existence had no meaning. This wasn't the void of modern physics or the emptiness we imagine when we close our eyes. This was something far more profound. It was the unmanifest potential of everything that would ever be. And floating in this impossible non-space was a single being, a presence so vast that calling it a god seems inadequate. This was Vishnu, the preserver, lying in cosmic sleep on the coils of Ananta, the infinite serpent with 1,000 heads, drifting on the primordial ocean that existed before oceans had meaning. As Vishnu dreamed, something miraculous occurred. From his navel, a lotus began to grow, its stem rising through dimensions of reality, its petals unfurling with impossible geometry. And seated on that lotus was Brahma, the creator, awakening to consciousness with a singular purpose, but no memory of how he came to be. Brahma opened his eyes and looked around, seeing nothing but endless water and the sleeping form of Vishnu below. Confusion gripped him. Who am I? Where did I come from? What is this place? These weren't just Brahma's questions. They were the universe asking itself into existence. So Brahma began to meditate, diving deep into his own consciousness, searching for answers in the only place they could be found, within. For thousands of cosmic years he sat in meditation, and slowly, understanding dawned. He was the instrument of creation, and the time had come to begin. But Brahma faced a problem. How do you create a universe from nothing? The answer lies in one of Hinduism's most profound concepts. Everything that exists is already contained within the divine consciousness. Creation isn't making something from nothing. It's the unfolding of what already exists in potential form within the mind of God. Brahma began to divide himself, splitting his being into complementary forces. He created the principles of existence, time and space, matter and energy, consciousness and form. From his thoughts came the Vedas, the sacred knowledge that would structure all reality. From his breath came the rhythms that would govern cosmic cycles. And then came the blueprint for life itself. Brahma created the 7 great sages, the Saptarishi, who would go on to populate the universe with beings of every kind. He fashioned the gods and the demons, the celestial realms and the earthly planes. He wove together the fabric of karma, the law of cause and effect that would govern every action in every lifetime. If this story is expanding your mind, hit that like button and subscribe so you don't miss our deep dives into the world's most fascinating creation myths. Drop a comment telling me which creation story you want to hear next. But here's where the Hindu story diverges radically from most creation myths. In many traditions, creation happens once, linearly, with a clear beginning and eventual end. Not in Hinduism. According to the ancient texts, what Brahma created wasn't the first universe. It was one universe in an endless cycle of universes, each existing for one day in the life of Brahma. And that day, it lasts 4.32 billion years. When Brahma's day ends, the universe dissolves back into the cosmic ocean, returning to that state of unmanifest potential. Vishnu sleeps. And when Brahma awakens again, he creates anew. This cycle repeats for 100 years of Brahma's life, with each year containing 360 of these cosmic days and nights. When you do the math, we're talking about timescales that dwarf modern cosmology, periods so vast that human comprehension simply breaks down. And when Brahma finally dies after his 100-year lifespan, another Brahma is born, and the cycle begins again, forever. But creation is only one part of the story. Enter Shiva, the destroyer, the third member of the Hindu trinity. While Brahma creates and Vishnu preserves, Shiva's role is to end each cosmic cycle, clearing the way for renewal. This isn't destruction as we understand it, some malevolent force bent on annihilation. It's transformation, the necessary dissolution that allows new forms to emerge. The ancient texts describe Shiva performing the Tandava, the cosmic dance that shakes the foundations of reality itself. His dance represents the constant movement of the universe, the eternal rhythm of creation, preservation, and destruction, happening simultaneously at every moment. Every atom vibrates with this dance. Every star that's born and dies echoes its rhythm. You, reading this right now, are part of Shiva's dance, your cells dying and regenerating, your thoughts arising and dissolving, your very existence a temporary pattern in the eternal flow. This brings us to perhaps the most revolutionary aspect of Hindu cosmology, the nature of reality itself. According to these ancient teachings, the universe we perceive isn't ultimately real. It's Maya, often translated as illusion, but more accurately understood as the divine play or cosmic illusion. Everything we see, touch, taste, and experience is a projection of consciousness, a dream in the mind of Brahma, or, more accurately, in the unified field of consciousness that pervades everything. This doesn't mean the universe doesn't exist. It means it doesn't exist in the way we think it does. It's real in the way a dream is real to the dreamer, substantial and meaningful within its own context, but ultimately a temporary manifestation of something deeper and more fundamental. And what is that fundamental reality? Brahman, the ultimate consciousness, the ground of all being, infinite, eternal, and unchanging, the one reality from which all apparent multiplicity springs. Here's where it gets personal. According to Hindu philosophy, you aren't separate from this cosmic story. You're not some accidental byproduct of creation, not a tiny speck lost in an incomprehensibly vast universe. The deepest teaching of the Upanishads, the philosophical texts that explain the Vedas, is captured in one phrase: Tattvam asi, that thou art. The consciousness that looks out through your eyes, that thinks your thoughts, that experiences your life, is the same consciousness that dreamed the universe into being. You are not in the universe. The universe is in you. Your true nature, your Atman or individual soul, is identical with Brahman, the cosmic soul you've simply forgotten. Creation, in the Hindu view, is God playing hide and seek with itself, consciousness deliberately fragmenting into countless beings, each forgetting its divine nature so it can rediscover it. Every life you live, every experience you have is part of that rediscovery. So why does any of this happen? Why does consciousness divide itself? Why does the universe cycle endlessly through creation and destruction? The ancient sages offered an answer that might surprise you. Lila, the divine play. The universe exists because consciousness delights in experiencing itself through infinite forms. There's no ultimate purpose beyond the experience itself. It's art for art's sake. existence for the joy of existing. But within this cosmic play, individual souls journey toward moksha, liberation, the realization of their true nature as Brahman. This isn't about escaping to some heavenly realm. It's about waking up to what you've always been, recognizing that you were never separate from the source. And once that recognition occurs, once you see through the veil of Maya completely, you exit the cycle of rebirth. Not because you're destroyed, but because you've remembered that you were never truly born, that you are the eternal witness, the unchanging consciousness behind all changing forms. The Hindu interpretation of creation offers something rare, a creation story that's also a meditation on consciousness, a cosmology that's simultaneously a psychology, a myth that contains within it the seed of direct experience. It tells us that the universe is far stranger and more beautiful than we imagined, that time operates on scales that humble our brief lives, and that the ultimate truth of existence might be found not by looking outward at the cosmos, but inward at the nature of consciousness itself. We're not just stardust. We're the universe waking up to itself, consciousness playing at being human, divinity temporarily forgetting its nature so it can rediscover the wonder of what it's always been.
Long before the great empires rose and fell, before the world's most famous prophets drew their first breath, something ancient was already taking root in the Indian subcontinent. We call it Hinduism, and it may be the oldest living spiritual tradition on Earth, stretching back more than 4 millennia. But here's what makes it unusual: no single founder, no one moment of creation. To many who practice it, Hinduism wasn't invented, it was always there, like the universe itself, where it all began. The story starts with the Indus Valley Civilization, one of humanity's earliest experiments in urban living. These people built sophisticated cities, practiced ritual cleansing, and honored feminine divine forces. Something spiritual was clearly at the center of their world. Then came the Vedic period, roughly 1500 BCE, and with it, the composition of the Vedas, a body of sacred Sanskrit texts unlike anything else in the ancient world. These weren't simple stories. They were intricate, poetic hymns exploring gods, nature, consciousness, and creation. The oldest, the Rig Veda, contains over 1,000 hymns, composed at a time when most of humanity hadn't yet developed writing. At the heart of these texts was a radical idea. Beneath all the gods, all the rituals, all the visible world, there exists one invisible, all-pervading force. They called it Brahman, not a deity in the conventional sense, but the very fabric of reality itself. Hinduism is famously home to millions of gods, but this isn't the chaos it might seem. Most Hindus understand these deities as different expressions of that single cosmic truth. Brahman, wearing many faces. Vishnu, the preserver. Shiva, the destroyer and renewer. Lakshmi, goddess of abundance. Each one a lens through which humans can approach the infinite. Hinduism also introduced a framework for human life built around 4 goals. Dharma, living rightly and fulfilling your duties. Artha, building prosperity and security. Kama, experiencing joy and beauty. And moksha, ultimately liberating the soul from the endless cycle of rebirth. It's a surprisingly holistic vision, honoring both worldly life and spiritual freedom. Few ideas from Hinduism have traveled further than karma. The principle is elegant. Every action you take sends ripples forward, not just through this life, but into the next. Because in Hindu belief, death isn't an ending. The soul moves on, reborn into a new existence shaped by how the last one was lived. Live with compassion and integrity, and your next chapter improves. Spend your days in cruelty or selfish indulgence, and the universe will have lessons waiting. No divine judge, no courtroom, just the weight of your own choices carried forward. It's a philosophy that places extraordinary responsibility and power in the individual. Perhaps the best way into Hinduism's heart is through its 2 legendary epics. The Ramayana follows Prince Rama on a sweeping quest to rescue his wife Sita from a demon king, a tale woven through with loyalty, courage, and divine intervention, complete with flying chariots and an army of monkeys. The Mahabharata goes even deeper. At its center is a devastating civil war between rival branches of a royal family. On the eve of battle, the warrior Arjuna is paralyzed by moral doubt. His charioteer, revealed to be Lord Krishna himself, then delivers one of the most profound spiritual discourses ever recorded. That dialogue became the Bhagavad Gita, a text that continues to shape millions of lives today, exploring duty, the nature of the soul, and what it truly means to act with integrity. Over centuries, India was conquered and colonized by Mughal dynasties and later by the British Empire. Temples were destroyed, traditions were suppressed. Colonial administrators actually hardened the caste system, using it as a tool of social control. Missionaries dismissed Hindu beliefs as primitive superstition. But Hinduism's response was not collapse, it was reinvention. Reformers emerged, challenging discrimination, simplifying rituals, and bringing ancient wisdom into dialogue with the modern world. No one embodied this more powerfully than Mahatma Gandhi. Drawing directly from Hindu principles, particularly ahimsa, the ethic of nonviolence, Gandhi built a mass movement that ultimately drove the British from India. The country gained independence in 1947, though not without the painful rupture of partition, which divided the subcontinent along religious lines. India's new constitution outlawed caste discrimination. The struggle for equality continues, but so does the momentum. Today, Hinduism is the third largest religion on the planet, with over 1 billion followers spanning every continent. Its influence on global culture runs deeper than most people realize. Yoga, meditation, mindfulness, the concept of karma, the ethics of vegetarianism, all of these have Hindu roots, and all have become mainstream in the modern West. So what ultimately is Hinduism? It resists simple definition. It's not one god, one book, or one doctrine. It's a vast, living tradition, a way of perceiving a world where everything is interconnected, where every choice echoes across lifetimes, and where the soul's journey has no final destination, only deeper understanding. More than most traditions, Hinduism has always been comfortable with questions, perhaps because it has always suspected that the deepest truths aren't learned from the outside. They're uncovered from within. And maybe that's the most powerful gift Hinduism offers the modern world. Not a rigid set of rules, but an open invitation to question, to seek, to grow. India is not just a country on a map. It is a civilization that has been asking the biggest questions humans can ask about life, death, duty, and the divine for thousands of years. And it hasn't stopped asking. That story deserves to be told, and we are here to tell it.
Something happened thousands of years ago that we cannot explain. Gods walked among humans, not as symbols, not as stories. Physically present, Lord Vishnu appeared in front of kings. Lord Shiva spoke to sages. Devas descended. Battles happened, blessings were given, curses were real, and then it stopped. No more appearances, no more divine voices, no more miracles you can stand in front of and touch. And here's the question that nobody wants to ask honestly. Why? Did the gods leave? Did they die? Did they never exist? Or did something happen to us? Because here is what the ancient texts actually say. And it's not what you think. The reason you cannot see gods has nothing to do with whether they exist. It has everything to do with what you have become. Stay with me. Because what I'm about to tell you will change how you see reality itself. Let's start with a simple, uncomfortable truth. You trust your eyes completely. If you don't see something, it doesn't exist. That's the invisible law you live by. And it feels logical. It feels scientific even. But your senses are not showing you reality. They are showing you a fraction of it. Right now, as you watch this, there are radio waves passing through your body. Wi-Fi signals, infrared radiation, magnetic fields, none of which you can see, hear, or feel, and you accept that completely. You never say, Wi-Fi doesn't exist because I can't see it. A dog hears frequencies your ears cannot reach. A snake senses heat your skin cannot detect. Some birds navigate using the Earth's magnetic field, a force completely invisible to you. So the question is not, is something there? The real question is, am I equipped to perceive it? Because you already live inside a universe that is far larger than your five senses can capture. Science confirmed this. Physics confirmed this. And yet, the moment someone says, maybe divine consciousness exists beyond the range of human perception, suddenly that feels impossible. That's not logic. That's a blind spot. Now, here is where it gets personal. Let's talk about Arjuna, because his story destroys every excuse we have. Arjuna was standing next to Lord Krishna. Physically, every single day, they ate together, they laughed together, they planned military strategy together. He could touch Krishna's shoulder. He could look into his eyes. And still, Arjuna could not see who Krishna truly was. Not because Krishna was hiding, not because Arjuna wasn't devoted enough, but because Arjuna's human perception simply could not process what was standing in front of him. Then came the moment in Kurukshetra, when Arjuna broke down, when he dropped his bow, and Krishna began speaking what we now call the Bhagavad Gita. And at the end, Arjuna asked to see Krishna's true form. Krishna said yes, but first, he gave Arjuna Divya Chakshu, a divine eye, a different mode of perception. Not better eyesight, a different kind of sight entirely. And what did Arjuna see? Something with no beginning and no end. Something containing every god, every demon, every star, every life form, all at once. Time collapsing forward. Armies dying before the battle even began. And Arjuna, a warrior who had faced death his entire life, could not handle it. He begged Krishna to stop. He was terrified. He asked for the familiar human form back. Think about what that means. Even when God was physically present in human form, a human being still needed a completely different perceptual system just to begin to see the truth. And even after receiving that ability, the experience was so overwhelming that a trained, disciplined, deeply devoted warrior could not sustain it for more than a few moments. Now look at yourself honestly. What preparation have you done? What discipline? What stillness? You expect to see what Arjuna couldn't see, without even wanting to put down your phone for an hour. Now let's ask the deeper question. Even if humans could perceive the divine, should gods be permanently visible? Think about what that would do to humanity. If Lord Vishnu walked the streets today, visibly, undeniably in a form everyone could see, what would happen? People wouldn't act from understanding. They wouldn't grow. They wouldn't choose. They would obey out of pure fear, or worship out of spectacle. The entire meaning of free will, of karma, of spiritual evolution, gone. The Vedic framework understands this. Vishnu appears only when cosmic balance is broken. He takes an avatar, a descent, accomplishes the restoration, and withdraws. Because permanent divine visibility would destroy the very conditions needed for human consciousness to evolve. Shiva lives on Kailash, but not in a form you can photograph. Not because he is absent, but because his presence is not limited to a body that occupies a single location. He's not hiding, he's everywhere, but in a frequency most human minds cannot tune into. Brahma created everything and then stepped back. Because creation does not require the creator to stand next to every atom explaining itself. The creation is the evidence. Every breath you take, every child born, every tree that grows from a seed, that is Brahma's work, happening in real time, whether you acknowledge it or not. Not seeing something is not proof it isn't there. It is only proof that you are not currently perceiving it. Here is the part that should disturb you most. In ancient times, even then, not everyone saw gods. It was never random. It was never just about luck or location. The ones who experienced the divine were the ones who had done something specific. They had trained their minds to become still. Tapas, dhyana, samadhi. Practices built on one principle, that consciousness, when purified and stabilized, begins to perceive what ordinary consciousness cannot reach. Now look at the modern mind. You wake up and within 30 seconds, you are inside your phone. Your mind is never still. Not for a single uninterrupted minute. It is always reacting, always comparing, always producing noise. Even when your body is resting, your mind is running at full speed, going nowhere. If something divine and subtle were happening around you right now, you would miss it. Not because it wasn't there, because you are not there. Not fully, not quietly. Your attention is distributed across 100 different things at all times. The ancient texts don't say God is loud and obvious and difficult to ignore. They say the opposite. The divine is described as sukshma, subtle, fine, delicate. It does not perform for distracted minds. It does not compete with notifications. A signal is already in the air. The question is whether your receiver is tuned. And now comes the most important question of all. You keep asking, where is God? You keep looking outward, at temples, at scriptures, at the sky. But the Upanishads point in a different direction entirely. Tat tvam asi, that thou art. The consciousness you are using to search for God, that itself is the thing you are looking for. The awareness behind your eyes right now. The thing that watches your thoughts. The presence that is still there even when your mind goes completely silent. You are searching everywhere outside for something that has never left the inside. So here is your real question. Not, why can't I see God? The real question is, who is the one that's looking? If Lord Vishnu appeared in front of you right now, not in the form you've imagined, not with 4 arms and a conch shell and a dramatic entrance, but quietly, subtly, in the most unexpected form, would you recognize him? Or would you glance up, feel nothing, and go back to scrolling? Be honest, because that honesty, that moment of real self-examination, might be the closest you've come to the divine in a very long time. Every religion on earth has a devil, a dark lord, a fallen angel, a cosmic enemy of God. Christianity has Satan. Islam has Iblis. Zoroastrianism has Ahriman. But Hinduism, the oldest living spiritual tradition on this planet, has no devil. Why? Is it because Hinduism ignores evil? Because its gods are weak? Or because it understands something so profound, so terrifyingly true about the nature of darkness, that it never needed one? What if evil was never the opposite of God, but a part of God itself? Stay, because what you're about to discover will change the way you see everything. Most of us grow up in a world built on a single idea, that good and evil are 2 separate forces, eternally at war. Light versus darkness. God versus the devil. Heaven versus hell. It's a clean story. Comfortable. It tells us exactly who to blame when things go wrong. But Sanatan Dharma, what the world calls Hinduism, looked at the cosmos and asked a far more dangerous question. What if there is no separation? Thousands of years ago, the rishis, the great seers of ancient India, sat beneath stars that modern telescopes have only recently learned to count. They didn't just observe the universe, they entered it. And what they found was not a battlefield between God and the devil. What they found was Brahman, the single, infinite, undivided consciousness from which all things emerge and into which all things return. Everything. Light and shadow, creation and destruction, love and cruelty, the saint and the murderer. All of it. 1. This was not a comfortable revelation. It was a shattering one. So if there is no devil, no singular architect of evil, where does darkness come from? In Sanatan Dharma, the answer is found in a single Sanskrit word. Avidya. Ignorance. Not ignorance as in stupidity. Not ignorance as in lack of education. Avidya is the cosmic forgetting. The moment a soul forgets its own divine nature and begins to believe it is separate. Separate from others. Separate from the universe, separate from God. And from that forgetting, everything we call evil is born. Greed, because you believe you are not enough. Hatred, because you believe the other is truly other. Violence, because you have forgotten that the one you wound is you. This is why Hinduism never needed a devil, because evil is not an invading force from outside. It is a direction, a turning away from truth. It is the darkness that exists not because a demon lit it, but because a soul closed its eyes. But here is where Sanatan Dharma becomes truly extraordinary. It doesn't just explain evil, it personifies it in the most breathtaking way imaginable. Look at the great demons of Hindu mythology, the Asuras. Ravana, the most brilliant scholar of his age, master of the Vedas, devotee of Shiva, and yet consumed by ego, by lust, by the belief that his intellect made him untouchable. Hiranyakashipu, a father so consumed by power and revenge that he tried to murder his own son for daring to love God. Mahishasura, a warrior of such immense strength that even the gods could not defeat him, whose arrogance became his blindness. Western eyes look at these figures and see villains. Hindu eyes see something far more terrifying and far more beautiful. They see mirrors. Every demon in Hindu mythology is a magnified reflection of something that lives inside every human soul. Ravana is your pride. Hiranyakashipu is your rage. Mahishasura is your refusal to surrender. The gods don't fight demons to destroy evil. They fight to awaken the soul that evil has swallowed. Even more astonishing, many of the greatest demons in Sanatan Dharma were once divine beings. They were devas, celestial beings of light, who, through desire or pride or a single fatal choice, fell into darkness. They were not created evil. They chose it, turn by turn, thought by thought, just like us. Here is the moment that stops most people cold. In Hinduism, the gods themselves carry darkness. Shiva, the supreme deity, worshipped by hundreds of millions, is the god of destruction. He dances as the universe ends. He carries a trident. He wears serpents. He lives in cremation grounds. Kali, the Divine Mother, stands on a battlefield, her hands red, her eyes wild, necklace of skulls around her throat. In any other tradition, these would be demons. In Sanatan Dharma, they are God. Why? Because Sanatan Dharma understood something that took Western science millennia to discover. That destruction is not the opposite of creation. It is its partner. Stars must die to birth new ones. Forests must burn to grow again. The self must be broken to be reborn as something greater. Shiva does not destroy because he's evil. Shiva destroys because without endings, nothing new can begin. Kali does not kill out of cruelty. Kali slaughters the ego, the false self, so the true self can finally breathe. This is the secret the rishis encoded in every myth, every deity, every temple carving. Darkness is not the enemy of the divine. It is the womb of transformation. So what does all of this mean for you, sitting here in this moment in your life? It means this: the darkness you carry, your fear, your shame, your anger, the parts of yourself you hide, they are not proof that you are broken. They are not evidence of a devil inside you. They are avidya. They are forgetting, and remembering is always possible. Sanatan Dharma does not ask you to wage war, against the darkness within you. It asks you to understand it, to look at it without flinching, to ask, what have I forgotten that made me this way? Because the moment you understand the root of your darkness, it begins to lose its power. This is Dharma, not a rule book handed down from a throne in the sky, but the living, breathing, dynamic truth of what you are. You are not a sinner fighting a devil. You are a divine being, temporarily lost in the dream of separation. And the entire universe, every god, every demon, every story ever told, exists to help you find your way back. Hinduism has no devil because it never needed one. It had something far more powerful. The truth. The cosmos is not a war. It is a conversation between light and shadow. And you are both. This is Sanatan Dharma. This is the eternal way. And it has been waiting for thousands of years for you to remember. If this opens something in you, a question, a feeling, a spark of recognition, then you already know what to do. Like this video. Not for the algorithm, but as a signal to the universe that truth still matters. Share it with someone who's fighting their own darkness right now. They may need this more than you know. And subscribe, because this is only the beginning. Every week, we go deeper into the ancient wisdom of Sanatan Dharma. The stories, the gods, the philosophy that shaped one of the greatest civilizations ever to walk this earth. The next video will take you even further. Are you ready? There is a king whose name is carved into the Mahabharata, the Vishnu Purana, the Shiva Purana. And yet almost no one tells his full story. He carried a mountain on his spine. He let poison pour from his own mouth. He watched his people burn, name by name, and could not stop it. And through all of it, he never asked for anything in return. Not power, not glory, not even to be remembered. Lord Krishna himself, on the battlefield of Kurukshetra, speaking to all of humanity across all of time, stopped and said, "Among serpents, I am Vasuki." That one line should tell you everything, but it tells you nothing unless you know the story behind it. Today, we go there. Vasuki was born in the lineage of Maharishi Kashyap and his wife Kadru, the mother of all serpents. From her, thousands of Nagas came into being. Sheshnag, Takshak, Karkotaka, Padma. A great and ancient clan, older than most of what we call civilization. But Vasuki was different from the beginning. You may know Sheshnag, the cosmic serpent, whose infinite coils form the bed on which Lord Vishnu rests, and upon whose hoods the weight of the entire earth is balanced. Sheshnag is the symbol of eternal patience, of holding, of endurance without complaint. Vasuki is something else. If Sheshnag is the stillness beneath existence, Vasuki is the one who moves into the fire. He became the Nagaraj, the king of the Nagas. His realm was Naglok, a hidden kingdom in the depths of Patal Lok, described in the texts as luminous with gems, alive with ancient knowledge, filled with rivers that carried not water but wisdom. And over all of it, Vasuki ruled with something rare in kings of any age: equal justice. The small Naga and the great one stood in the same court. The same dharma applied to both. He is described with a Nagamani, a jewel upon his forehead that lit all of Naglok without need of sun or fire. 9 hoods, each representing a different direction of power. And eyes that, if you met them, made you remember your own wrongdoings. Not with shame, but with clarity. The gaze of a just king. But here is the thing about Vasuki's inner life that the texts quietly reveal. He was not interested in power for its own sake. From the very beginning, what he wanted was something simpler and something far more difficult. He wanted to serve. In the early days of Naglok, when Vasuki was still young in his kingship, he heard about Mahadeva, not the sanitized version, not Shiva, the gracious deity, sitting comfortably in a temple. He heard about that Shiva, the one who smears cremation ash on his body, who chooses to live among the dead in the forests that others flee from, who holds destruction and compassion in the same hand and calls it the same thing. Something in Vasuki recognized that. Something in him said, "This is the truth I have been looking for." He went to the Himalayas. He found a cave and he sat down. The penance he undertook was severe. The texts use the word go, which means something beyond what the body should survive. No food, no water. Months passed into years. Storms broke over the mountain. Snow buried the cave entrance. Termites moved across his scales. And still, the mantra continued. Om Namah Shivaya, a current running beneath every breath, beneath every silence. And then one day, because Shiva always comes for those who truly call, the earth shook. The sky broke open in a strange thunder, and Mahadeva stood before him. Ganga flowing through matted locks, the crescent moon cool on his forehead, ash on his skin like starlight, and in his eyes, that particular quality of Shiva's gaze that sees through everything you have built around yourself, straight into what you actually are. Shiva looked at Vasuki and said, "Your devotion has drawn me here. Ask, what do you desire?" Vasuki was quiet for a moment, and then he said, "My lord, I want nothing. Only this, that I may always remain near you. Think about that. A king, a being of extraordinary power, sitting before the source of all boons. And what he asked for wasn't sovereignty over new realms, not immortality, not weapons or wealth or influence, just proximity, just the right to serve." Shiva was silent. Then, "Tathastu, from today, you will become the ornament of my neck." And so Vasuki, king of the Nagas, took his place coiled around the throat of Mahadeva, where he remains in every image, in every Shiva Linga, in every temple across the world to this day. Still there, still holding, still choosing nearness over everything else. But devotion, in the Hindu philosophical tradition, is never simply a feeling. It is tested. Repeatedly, as if the universe needs to confirm that what you carry is real. Vasuki's test came with a task that no one else could do, and that anyone with self-preservation instincts would have refused. The gods had lost their divine power to a sage's curse. The demons had seized the heavens. Lord Vishnu offered a solution. Churn the Kshir Saga, the cosmic ocean of milk. From its depths would rise Amrit, the nectar that cannot be exhausted, the immortality that cannot be revoked. But the churning required Mount Mandarakala as the rod, and the rod required a rope. Brahma said, only Vasuki could serve as that rope. The gods and demons came to Naglok together, a strange alliance born of shared need. They stood before the Nagaraj and asked him to offer his own body as a tool, to wrap himself around a mountain, to be pulled from both ends by beings far less scrupulous than himself. Vasuki understood exactly what was being asked. He was not naive about the pain it would involve. The weight of Mandarakala pressing into his spine, the tearing from both sides, the possibility that his body would simply give out before the churning was done. He was silent for a moment. Then, "I am ready." The churning began. The gods stood on the tail side, Vishnu's quiet wisdom at work, placing them there deliberately. The demons on the head side, thinking themselves more powerful for it. They didn't understand that as the friction grew and the spinning intensified, the smoke and fire would pour from Vasuki's mouth, and it would pour directly into their faces. Vasuki didn't even know he was protecting the gods. He was simply enduring. The mountain turned. the ocean heaved. The pressure on his body was unlike anything the scriptures describe in physical terms. They simply say that Vasuki bore it, that he did not cry out, that he did not ask for the churning to stop. And from the depths, creation began to release its gifts. Kamadhenu, the wish-fulfilling cow. Ushchaishravas, the divine horse. Airavata, the white elephant. Kalpavriksha, the Apsaras. Lakshmi herself, rising on a lotus. Dhanvantari, carrying the vessel of Amrit. And then, something else. The water blackened. A smell unlike anything living reached the gods first. They stepped back before they understood why. Then the surface broke open, and what rose was Hala Hala, the Calcute venom. The poison that had accumulated in the depths of all creation since the beginning of time. A substance so lethal that its mere proximity began to wither the trees, silence the birds, boil the ocean. Both gods and demons fled, and Veski was still there, still wrapped around the mountain. He had given his word, and his word to him was not negotiable. He breathed the Hala Hala. He felt it move through his scales, and he stayed. Everyone called for Shiva, and Shiva came. He lifted the Hala Hala in his palm, held it there for one terrifying moment for all the worlds to see, then drank it. Parvati caught his throat. The poison stayed there, neither going down nor coming back. His neck turned blue, and so began the name that echoes through every prayer. Neelkanth. In that moment, Vasuki was coiled around that very throat. He felt the poison his god had drunk. He felt the stillness of Shiva holding death inside himself and not being moved by it. And something in Vasuki, already broken from the churning, already carrying the weight of the mountain in his bones. Something in him simply held tighter, not in panic, in love. But the hardest chapter of Vasuki's story is not the churning. It is not Tripura Dahan, where he became the string of Shiva's bow so that 3 demon cities could be destroyed with a single arrow. It is not even the Mahabharata, where his blessing doubled Bhima's already mythic strength. The hardest chapter is the one that came from his own home, his own blood. Kadru, his mother, made a bet with her stepsister Vinata over the color of a divine horse's tail. When she realized she was about to lose, she commanded her Naga children to coil themselves on the horse's tail and make it appear black. A lie disguised as obedience. Many Nagas refused. They said, "This is sin. We will not do it." Kadru cursed them. In her rage, their own mother cursed her children, sentenced them all to die in fire. Vasuki was king. He bore that knowledge quietly. A king often has to carry the weight of what he cannot undo. And then, generations later, it came true. King Janamejaya, consumed by grief over his father Parikshit's death at the fangs of Takshak, initiated the Sarpa Yajna, the serpent sacrifice, a ritual of absolute annihilation, where mantras were recited, names were called, and each name serpent, wherever it was in the 3 worlds, was pulled by invisible force directly into the fire. The fire roared, and the names began. Vasuki sat in Naglok and listened. Name by name, face by face, a servant from his court, a friend of his brother, a child who had only just learned to speak. Into the fire, into the fire, into the fire. He who had not wept through the pain of Samudra Manthan. He who had not flinched when Shiva drank poison against his scales. He wept. And in his grief, he asked the question that perhaps you too have asked in your own life. In whatever language, in whatever moment of helplessness, must the children always pay for the sins of those who came before them? Can one lie, one moment of weakness, truly erase an entire lineage? He closed his eyes. He remembered Shiva, And he prayed, not the formal prayer of ritual, but the raw prayer of a king who has run out of options. The answer came not from above, but from within his own family. Long ago, Brahma had told him, "Your sister Jaratkaru will bear a son named Astika, and Astika will be the one." Vasuki turned to his sister Manasa Devi, herself weeping, herself burning, and said quietly, "Sister, your son is our last hope." Astika arrived at the yajna site, young, radiant, filled with Vedic knowledge so deep and precise that King Janamejaya stopped the ritual just to listen. Pleased, the king offered a boon. Astika asked for one thing only: stop the yajna. The fire died. The names stopped. The Nagas were saved. And Vasuki, the king who had moved mountains, who had held creation together as a rope, who had been a weapon and an ornament and a witness, fell at the feet of his young nephew and said, "You have given life to my entire lineage. I am forever in your debt." A king, bowing to a child, because that child had done what all his power could not. That is what Dharma looks like when it is real. It doesn't calculate status. It honors the source of grace, wherever it comes from. On the battlefield of Kurukshetra, with armies facing each other across a field of unthinkable consequence, Arjuna broke down. The Gandiva fell. His hands trembled. Krishna spoke. He revealed his Virat Swarupa, the cosmic form that contains all of existence, and walked Arjuna through it. He named the greatest of everything. Among gods, I am Indra. Among rivers, I am the Ganga. Among mountains, I am the Meru. And then, among serpents, I am Vasuki. Not Sheshnag, who holds the earth. Not Takshak, who is feared across the three worlds. Vasuki, the one who asked for nothing. The one who endured without complaint. The one who wept for his people in private and found a way forward anyway. When God says, "I am this," he isn't simply listing the powerful. He's pointing to a particular quality that he recognizes as divine. In Vasuki, that quality was this: the willingness to serve beyond what serving costs you, to hold the mountain even when your spine is breaking, to stay near your God even when your God is drinking poison. That quality, Krishna was saying, is not ordinary. That quality is me. Every year in the month of Shravan, Nag Panchami is observed. Milk is offered to serpents, prayers are spoken, and in every temple, coiled around every Shiva linga, there he is. Still. Vasuki, still holding, still there. We tend to remember the gods who blazed, who fought and won and returned in triumph. Those stories are necessary. They give us courage. But Vasuki's story gives us something else. It gives us the permission to serve without recognition, to stay when staying is painful, to hold tighter when everything in the situation tells us to let go. Most of us will never churn a cosmic ocean, but most of us know what it is to carry something heavy, a responsibility, a grief, a family burden we did not choose, and to keep going anyway, to keep showing up. Not because the reward is coming, but because this is who we are. Vasuki did not become divine because he performed great deeds. He performed great deeds because he had already decided, quietly, in a Himalayan cave, alone, what he was willing to give, and to whom, and without condition. That decision is available to all of us, every single day. If Vasuki's story moved something in you, write it in the comments. Not just Jai Vasuki. Tell me which moment. Was it the penance, the churning, the names falling into the fire? Those comments become the next video. Your questions shape this channel. Subscribe and press the bell, because the next journey is already being prepared.
In the beginning, before time had a name, there was only the vast cosmic ocean. Its waters were neither warm nor cold, but perfectly balanced, stretching infinitely in all directions. The ocean breathed slowly, gently rising and falling like the chest of a sleeping child. Upon these calm waters rested the great serpent Shesha, whose 1,000 heads swayed softly with the rhythm of the waves. Each head was adorned with jewels that caught the light of distant stars, creating gentle patterns of light that danced across the water's surface. And upon Shesha rested Lord Vishnu, the preserver of all that is. His blue skin glowed softly with an inner light, peaceful and constant like the evening sky just after sunset. His 4 arms rested gently at his sides, and his eyes were closed in the deepest, most peaceful meditation. Beside him sat Lakshmi, the goddess of abundance and grace. She watched over him with infinite patience, her hand occasionally moving to fan him gently with lotus flowers. The fragrance of these flowers drifted across the cosmic ocean, sweet and calming. Time moved differently here. A moment could be an eternity, and an eternity could pass in a breath. There was no urgency, no haste, only the gentle rocking of the cosmic waters, the soft breathing of Vishnu, and the quiet presence of Lakshmi. The stars above moved in their ancient patterns, creating spirals of light that reflected in the still waters below. Occasionally, a cosmic breeze would ripple across the surface, creating gentle waves that lapped against Shesha's form. Vishnu dreamed, and in his dreams, entire universes were born. Galaxies swirled into existence, stars ignited, planets formed and cooled. Life emerged, slowly, patiently, like flowers opening to the morning sun. But here, in this timeless place, all was still, all was calm. The cosmic ocean held everything in its embrace, rocking it gently, endlessly, peacefully. Far beyond the cosmic ocean, in a realm where worry cannot exist, lies Vaikuntha, the eternal abode of Vishnu. It is a garden of infinite beauty where every flower blooms in perpetual peace. The gardens are filled with wish-fulfilling trees, called Kalpavriksha. Their branches hang low with the weight of golden fruits, and their leaves whisper softly in breezes that carry the scent of jasmine and sandalwood. Beneath these trees, the grass is soft as silk, perfect for resting. Crystal clear streams wind through the gardens, their waters so pure they sing as they flow. The sound is like gentle bells, creating a melody that seems to come from everywhere and nowhere at once. Small bridges of white marble arch over these streams, their surfaces smooth and cool to the touch. In the center of the garden stands Vishnu's palace, made of materials that shimmer between gold and pearl, always changing, always beautiful. The walls are not solid but seem to be made of light itself, welcoming and warm. Inside the palace, time does not exist. There is only the present moment, stretching peacefully in all directions. Celestial beings move through the halls, slowly, gracefully, never rushing, never worried. Their footsteps make no sound on the crystal floors. Vishnu walks through his garden in the gentle light that is neither day nor night. He pauses to touch the flowers, and they lean toward him like children seeking comfort. Birds with jeweled feathers rest on his shoulders, singing softly. He sits beside a pond filled with lotus flowers. The flowers are pink and white and blue, their petals perfect, their fragrance subtle and sweet. Vishnu gazes into the water, and the water gazes back, perfectly still, perfectly clear. In the reflection he sees not himself, but all of creation. Every soul, every life, every moment of joy and peace. He watches with infinite patience, infinite love, infinite care. Nothing is rushed, nothing is forced, all unfolds in its own perfect time. The evening light in Vaikuntha is golden and soft, casting long, gentle shadows. The temperature is always perfect, the air always fresh. There is nowhere to go, nothing to do, only the eternal present moment of peace. Long ago, in one of Vishnu's gentle dreams, There was a great flood coming to cleanse the world, but Vishnu, ever compassionate, appeared to a wise king named Manu in a form both humble and profound. He came as a tiny fish, no bigger than a finger, swimming in the king's cupped hands as he performed his morning prayers at the river. The fish looked up at Manu with eyes full of wisdom and spoke in a voice like flowing water. "Protect me, and I shall protect you," the little fish said softly. Manu placed the fish in a small clay pot filled with water, but overnight the fish grew larger. By morning, it needed a bigger vessel. Manu moved it to a large jar, then to a pond, then to a lake. Each time the fish grew but remained gentle and calm. Finally, the fish was too large for any container, and Manu took it to the ocean. As he released it into the waves, the fish spoke again, its voice now deep as the sea itself, yet still gentle. "A great flood will come in 7 days. Build a boat, gather seeds of every plant and pairs of every animal. When the waters rise, I will return to guide you." Manu did as instructed, working calmly and methodically. He built a strong boat of fragrant wood, gathering the seeds and animals with care and patience. He spoke to them softly, telling them not to fear, that all would be well. When the rains began, they fell gently at first, then stronger, filling the rivers and lakes, spreading across the land. But there was no panic in Manu's heart. He loaded the boat and waited. The fish appeared, now vast as a mountain with golden scales that caught the light of the covered sun. A great horn grew from its head, and Manu tied the boat to this horn with a rope made of the serpent Vasuki, who offered himself willingly for this purpose. Through the endless waters, the fish pulled the boat gently but steadily. The rain fell around them like a curtain, and the waves rose and fell in long, slow rhythms. Inside the boat, the animals rested peacefully, trusting in Vishnu's protection. Days passed, or perhaps weeks. Time had no meaning in the endless water, but the fish swam on, never tiring, never rushing. Finally, the rain began to slow, the clouds to part. The fish guided the boat to a mountain peak, emerging from the receding waters. As Manu secured the boat, the fish spoke one last time. "You and these creatures are the seeds of the new world. Grow slowly, peacefully, and remember, life is precious, and I am always watching over it." The fish descended back into the calm waters, becoming smaller and smaller, until it was just a gentle ripple on the surface, and the world began again, slowly, peacefully, in its own perfect time. In another of Vishnu's dreams, the gods and demons decided to work together to churn the cosmic ocean, seeking the nectar of immortality. But this required patience, cooperation, and the guidance of Vishnu himself. Vishnu took the form of a great tortoise, Kurma, and dove beneath the cosmic ocean. His shell was vast, like a floating island, and perfectly still. Upon this shell, the gods placed Mount Mandara to serve as the churning rod. The serpent Vasuki wrapped himself around the mountain, and the gods held his tail while the demons held his head. Together, they began to pull, back and forth, churning the ocean. The motion was rhythmic and steady, like the breathing of the earth itself. Pull and release, pull and release. The mountain turned slowly upon Kurma's back, grinding against his shell with a sound like distant thunder, low and rumbling. Vishnu, as the tortoise, remained perfectly still beneath it all. His meditation was unbroken. The weight of the mountain was nothing to him. He supported it all with effortless ease, his presence providing stability to the entire endeavor. As the churning continued, wonderful things began to emerge from the ocean. First came Kamadhenu, the wish-fulfilling cow, who walked calmly from the waves. Her coat white as milk, her eyes gentle. She found a peaceful place to rest on the shore. Then came the white elephant Airavata, massive and majestic, moving with surprising grace. He trumpeted softly and went to stand in the shade of a wish-fulfilling tree. The goddess Lakshmi emerged, radiant and calm, seated upon a pink lotus flower. She floated across the water, toward Vishnu, and as she approached, all became more beautiful, more peaceful, more harmonious. The moon rose from the waters, cool and soothing, taking its place in the sky to mark the gentle passage of time. The Parijata tree emerged, its flowers so fragrant they could calm the most troubled mind. But then came challenges. A terrible poison, hala hala, began to seep from the ocean, threatening to destroy everything. Yet even this was part of the plan. Lord Shiva appeared and drank the poison, holding it in his throat, turning it blue. The crisis passed, peacefully resolved. The churning continued, slower now, more rhythmic. The gods were losing, not slowly, not with dignity. They were being hunted, dragged from their thrones, scattered across the sky like broken stars. Indra, Lord of Lightning, the King of Heaven himself, had fled his own palace with nothing but the clothes on his back. The celestial army lay in ruins. Prayers rose from the earth unanswered, and above all of it, growing fat on the silence where divinity used to live, sat a demon named Tarakasura. He hadn't cheated to win. That was the worst part. He had earned this. Tarakasura was not born powerful. He became powerful the hardest way a demon can, through absolute, agonizing devotion. For years beyond counting, he stood motionless in meditation, starving his body, burning under the sun, standing in rivers of ice, refusing to break. He was performing tapas, the sacred austerity that, in the Hindu cosmos, generates so much spiritual heat that even the gods are forced to take notice. The universe has rules, and one of them is this: sincerity of devotion must be rewarded, regardless of who is doing the devoting. Brahma appeared before him, reluctant but bound. "Ask," the Creator said, "and it shall be given." Tarakasura smiled. He had thought carefully about this moment. He knew that the greatest warriors have the shortest lives, that brute strength always finds a stronger fist. So he asked not for power. He asked for a loophole. He asked that only one being in all of existence could ever defeat him, the son of Shiva. It was, as plans go, nearly perfect, because Shiva had no son. Shiva's beloved, Sati, had died, burned herself in sacred fire at her father's insult to her husband's name. And Shiva, shattered by grief, had sealed himself away from the world in meditation so deep that mountains grew silent around him. He was not going to marry again. He was not going to father a child. He was not going to open his eyes. Tarakasura had chosen his weakness with the precision of a surgeon, and so the demon took Swarga, the kingdom of heaven, and no one could stop him. The gods sat in desperate council. They had tried everything: weapons, alliances, strategy, brute force. Tarakasura had crushed it all. There was only one solution, and it was a problem that felt impossible. Someone had to make Shiva fall in love again. They turned to Parvati. She was already there. Parvati was not Sati reborn by accident. She was the great goddess Adi Shakti, the primordial feminine energy, the force that underlies all existence, who had chosen to walk the earth again as the daughter of the mountain king Himavan, for exactly this purpose. She already knew what the gods were too afraid to ask, and she had already begun. She went to Shiva's mountain. She brought flowers. She swept the path around his stillness. She sat near him and matched his silence, day after day, refusing to leave. But Shiva's eyes did not open. The gods, impatient, made a mistake. They sent Kama, the god of love, divine archer, whose flower-tipped arrows could crack open even the most sealed heart, to fire at Shiva from behind a tree. The arrow found its mark. Shiva's eyes opened, and then his third eye opened. A bolt of cosmic fire erupted from between Shiva's brows and reduced Kama to ash so completely that not even memory of his form remained. The god of love was gone in a single breath. His wife, Rati's scream, echoed across every realm. Shiva shut his eyes again. But here is the thing about Parvati that the gods had underestimated. She was not waiting for Shiva to love her. She was waiting to be worthy of him. After the disaster with Kama, she did not retreat. She removed her jewels and her fine clothes, let her hair grow loose, and went into the forest to perform her own austerities, standing in fire in summer, sitting in snow in winter, eating nothing but fallen leaves, then nothing at all. The mountain shook with the heat she generated. Now it was Shiva's eyes that opened on their own. He came to her disguised as a wandering ascetic, tested her, argued with her, even mocked the god she was waiting for. And Parvati defended Shiva's honor, to a stranger with such fire that the disguise fell apart. Shiva stood before her, revealed, and he knelt. They were married in a ceremony that the cosmos itself attended. Celestial musicians played, flowers fell from cloudless skies, and even grief paused to watch. But the child they needed could not be born easily. Shiva's power had been contained for an age. The energy he carried was not ordinary. It was the concentrated force of the universe's own destruction and regeneration, compressed into a single divine seed. When it was finally released, it burned so intensely that even Agni, the god of fire who carried it as a favor, cried out in pain. The Ganges herself, the purest river in all creation, was asked to receive it. From the water, wrapped in reeds, 6 glowing sparks emerged. 6 children, 6 perfect blazing babies, each one humming with a fraction of Shiva's infinite power. The 6 Kritikas, celestial star mothers, the Pleiades made flesh, found them. Each took one child to her breast. Each began to nurse one face of the divine. And then Parvati arrived. She looked at her 6 sons and felt something no philosophy could contain. With a cry of longing, she pulled all 6 children toward her at once. And where there had been 6, there was now one child, 6 faces, 12 arms, eyes that held the light of 6 stars. He opened 6 mouths and laughed. They named him Skanda. He was days old when the gods crowned him commander of their army. Let that sit for a moment. The celestial forces, ancient warriors, gods of wind and fire and thunder, all knelt before an infant because something in his presence made the choice obvious. This was not just power. This was purpose, wearing a body. This was the universe correcting itself, catching the arrow it had launched at its own heart. When Skanda rode out on his peacock, a bird he had subdued himself, taming its vanity and pressing it into divine service, the armies of heaven moved with him. His vel, the sacred spear given to him by Parvati, was not merely a weapon. It was her Shakti made physical, the goddess's own power, condensed into a point of absolute truth. Tarakasura saw the child coming and laughed. He had laughed before at armies. He had laughed at gods and heroes. But this laugh was different. It had a tremor in it, because even a demon who had outsmarted the cosmos could feel when the game had already ended. Skanda drove the vel through Tarakasura's chest. The demon fell, heaven exhaled, and across the 3 worlds, every being that had bent under the weight of that tyranny stood up straight for the first time in ages. Here is what this story is actually about. Tarakasura's boon was not stupidity, it was logic. He believed that grief was permanent, that a broken god stays broken, that the wound in Shiva's heart was a wall no one could climb. He was wrong. Parvati didn't storm the wall. She sat beside it. She matched the silence. She became worthy before she became a wife. And in doing so, she didn't just win Shiva's love. She brought the force of divine creation back into a universe that had started to give up. Skanda is not simply the son of a god and a goddess. He is what becomes possible when devotion meets patience, when grief is not denied but transformed, when the universe refuses to surrender even when every strategy has failed. He is born from fire, carried by water, raised by stars, made whole by love. He is six-faced because wisdom looks in every direction at once, and he arrives, always, exactly when the darkness has convinced itself that it has already won.
What if India never existed? Imagine waking up tomorrow in a world where you can't count past 3, where doctors have no concept of 0 in their calculations, and a simple infection could kill you because antibiotics don't exist. You can't play chess, there's no yoga to relieve your stress, and your smartphone? Completely impossible. This isn't some dystopian nightmare. This is what our world would actually look like if one civilization had never existed. Today, we're erasing India from history, and what you're about to discover will shock you. Because without India, the world you know wouldn't just be different, it would be unrecognizable. Let's find out why. Our story begins in the year 2026, but in an alternate timeline. You wake up, reach for your phone, but something's wrong. The screen shows strange symbols, Roman numerals. It reads IXXX instead of 130. You try to check your bank account, MMMDCCL dollars. That's 3,750, but it takes you 5 minutes to figure it out. Welcome to a world without the decimal system. In our reality, Indian mathematicians invented the concept of 0 and the decimal place value system between the 5th and 7th centuries CE. The mathematician Brahmagupta formally defined 0 and its operations in 628 CE. But in this alternate world, that never happened. Europe struggled with Roman numerals until the 13th century in our timeline. Without Indian mathematics filtering through the Islamic world, they'd still be struggling today. Try doing multiplication with Roman numerals, 44 times 23. Good luck. Advanced mathematics, engineering, physics, all practically impossible. Your morning coffee costs $12.49. The calculation gives you a headache. You head to work, but your commute takes 3 hours instead of 30 minutes. Why? Because computers don't exist. Modern computing relies entirely on binary code, ones and zeros. But in this world, the concept of 0 never existed. Without 0, there's no binary. Without binary, no programming. No programming means no computers, no internet, no smartphones, no GPS, no social media, no artificial intelligence. The digital revolution simply never happened. Engineers in this alternate world still use mechanical calculators that jam and break. Space exploration impossible. Landing on the moon required millions of calculations per second. Something unthinkable without computers. Satellites, weather prediction, modern aviation, all gone. Your office still uses typewriters and filing cabinets. Your smartphone is actually just a landline phone that weighs 5 pounds. Messages take days to arrive by post. At lunch, your colleague mentions she's feeling ill. She has a simple bacterial infection, but she's terrified, and she should be. In our world, India contributed enormously to medical science. Ancient Indian physicians pioneered cataract surgery, rhinoplasty, and understood the importance of hygiene. But more critically, in our timeline, Indian origin scientists have been crucial in modern medicine development. Without the mathematical precision that Indian numerals provided, pharmaceutical calculations would be nearly impossible. Imagine trying to measure 0.5 milligrams of a compound using Roman numerals. Drug development would be set back centuries. Your colleague faces a grim reality. Without advanced medicine, her life expectancy is about 40 years. Infant mortality is sky high. Diseases we consider minor are death sentences. Surgery, it's barbaric. Anesthesia dosing requires precise calculations impossible in this world. Antibiotics exist in crude forms, but without precise measurements, they're as likely to kill as cure. After work, you want to relax, but there's no such thing. Yoga, meditation, Ayurveda, all the wellness practices that help modern people manage stress, never existed. These originated in ancient India thousands of years ago. In this alternate world, people have no systematic approach to mental health and wellness. The concept of mindfulness, popularized globally through Indian meditation practices, is unknown. Stress-related diseases are rampant. People work until they collapse because there's no cultural framework for work-life balance that these Eastern philosophies introduced to the West. You come home exhausted, but there's no yoga class, no meditation app, no breathing exercises to help you decompress. Just exhaustion and a stiff drink, if you're lucky. You want to play a game to unwind. Chess doesn't exist. Chess originated in India around the 6th century CE as Chaturanga. In this alternate world, strategic board games never evolved beyond simple dice games. The entire genre of strategy gaming, from chess to modern video games based on tactical thinking, never developed. You can't watch a Bollywood film because, obviously, there is no Bollywood. But more than that, the storytelling traditions that influenced global cinema are absent. The narrative structures, the epic storytelling traditions from the Mahabharata and Ramayana that influenced everything from Star Wars to The Lord of the Rings, gone. Music is different too. The concept of the scale, particularly the 7-note scale that evolved partly through Indian classical music traditions, might have developed differently. Modern music theory would be unrecognizable. Getting dressed the next morning is depressing. Cotton fabric, refined through millennia of Indian textile innovation, is crude and expensive. India was the original home of cotton cultivation and textile manufacturing. The intricate dyeing techniques, the fine weaving methods. In this world, clothing is rough, uncomfortable, and prohibitively expensive. The global fashion industry, which in our world sources extensively from India and was inspired by Indian textile traditions, is a shadow of itself. Those comfortable cotton t-shirts you love? They're either non-existent or cost a month's salary. Buttons, which spread globally partly through Indian trade routes, might not have proliferated. You're stuck with complicated laces and ties. Dinner time arrives and you're hungry, but your food is bland, monotonous, and boring. India contributed more spices to global cuisine than any other civilization. Black pepper, cardamom, turmeric, cinnamon, ginger. These were traded globally from India for millennia. In our alternate world, European food never evolved beyond salt and local herbs. There's no curry, no chai, no concept of layered spices creating complex flavors. The spice trade, which drove the age of exploration, never happened. Without the pursuit of Indian spices, European nations might not have developed their naval technologies as rapidly. Columbus was seeking a route to India when he stumbled upon America. Think about that. Without India, the European discovery of the Americas might have happened decades or centuries later, completely changing world history. Your dinner is boiled meat and plain bread every single day. As you lie in bed, unable to sleep in this stressful, uncomfortable world, you search for meaning. But philosophical and spiritual concepts that originated in India, karma, dharma, nirvana, the idea of nonviolence, ahimsa, that inspired Gandhi, Martin Luther King Jr., and countless peace movements, none of these exist. Buddhism and Jainism, both born in India, never spread across Asia. Tibet, Thailand, Japan, Korea, their entire cultural and spiritual identities would be unrecognizable. Buddhism shaped East Asian civilization as profoundly as Christianity shaped Europe. Without these philosophies, the world is more brutal, less contemplative. The very idea that nonviolent resistance could topple empires, an idea that changed the 20th century, never emerged. Even language is impoverished in this world. Sanskrit, one of the oldest languages, influenced countless other languages. Linguistic concepts, the study of grammar through Panini's work, the foundation of modern linguistics, never developed. Words like sugar, orange, jungle, shampoo, bungalow, veranda, avatar, and thousands more never entered global languages because they came from Indian languages. The comparative study of Indo-European languages, which revolutionized our understanding of human history and migration, would be impossible without Sanskrit as a key piece of evidence. As we zoom out from this alternate timeline, we see a world that's darker, more difficult, less connected, and far less advanced. India's contributions weren't just about inventions, they were about fundamental concepts that enabled human progress. Zero wasn't just a number, it was a philosophical breakthrough that said nothing could be something. That paradoxical thinking enabled everything from advanced mathematics to quantum physics. The decimal system didn't just make math easier, it made advanced science possible. Indian philosophy didn't just offer spiritual comfort, it provided frameworks for ethics, governance, and social change that reverberated globally. In our real world, India's ancient universities like Nalanda attracted students from across Asia. Its mathematicians, astronomers, doctors, and philosophers shaped human knowledge. Its trade connected East and West. Its spiritual traditions offered alternatives to materialism. Its struggle for independence through nonviolence showed that moral force could defeat empires. Without India, we wouldn't just lose Bollywood, curry, and yoga. We'd lose the very foundations of modern life, from the smartphone in your pocket to the ideas of peace and nonviolence that, however imperfectly, guide international relations today. So the next time you use your phone, practice yoga, enjoy spicy food, or simply count to 10, remember, you're using gifts from a civilization that stretches back thousands of years and has shaped absolutely everything about the modern world.
They say when goddess Durga weeps, the monsoons rage across India. But few know why. In the celestial gardens where gods walk, there once bloomed a love so profound it shook the heavens themselves. A warrior goddess and a mortal prince. Love was poetry written in stardust, but destiny had penned a different ending. On the night of the blood moon, she held his dying body in her arms, his mortal heart unable to bear the divine fire of her immortal love. Some flames burned bright, some loves reached to far between worlds, and some tragedies echo through eternity. Long before temples rose in her name, before songs celebrated her victories, Durga walked the earth during a time when the veil between divine and mortal realms was gossamer thin. She had descended to vanquish the demon Raktabija, whose blood spawned 1,000 copies of himself with each drop spilled. The battle had raged for 40 days and 40 nights. Painting the Vindhya mountains crimson dot, it was on the 41st dawn, as she cleaned her celestial weapons by the Narmada River, that she first saw him. Prince Advait of the Chandravamsa dynasty knelt at the water's edge, offering prayers not for victory or wealth, but for wisdom to serve his people justly. His voice carried a melody that made even the river pause its flowing. Durga, accustomed to prayers of desperation and fear, found herself transfixed by this different devotion. "You pray like someone who has already found what he seeks," she said, materializing before him in the soft light of dawn. Her divine radiance dimmed to spare his mortal eyes. Advait looked up, and in that moment, the cosmic wheel of fate shuddered. He saw not a goddess, but a woman whose eyes held the weight of infinite battles, yet sparkled with curiosity about the simple world he inhabited. "I pray," he said steadily, "to be worthy of the breath I've been given." What began as conversation became companionship. Durga would appear in the royal gardens at twilight, and they would walk among the jasmine and champak flowers. She told him of celestial wars and cosmic duties. He shared poetry, showed her how monsoon clouds look different from earth than from heaven, taught her the names his people gave to stars she had only known as distant fires. "Why do mortals love so fiercely when they have so little time?" she asked one evening, as fireflies danced around them like falling stars. "Perhaps because we have so little time," Advait replied. "Every moment becomes infinite." She had lived millennia, but had never understood this truth. In her immortal existence, centuries passed like seasons, but with Advait, each heartbeat felt both eternal and fleeting. Their love grew like the sacred banyan tree, slowly, then all at once, roots reaching deep into forbidden soil. She showed him how moonlight tasted on mountain peaks. He taught her the pleasure of rain on skin, the comfort of silence shared, the bravery in vulnerability. But the heavens were watching. Lord Brahma summoned her to the celestial court. The other gods stood in a circle of judgment, their faces carved from cosmic indifference. "You forget yourself, Durga," Brahma's voice echoed through dimensions. "A goddess does not love a mortal. It disrupts the balance. His soul cannot contain your divinity. Your love will destroy him." Then make him immortal, she pleaded, her warrior's pride crumbling. I have served without question. I have never asked for anything. Asterisk immortality is not given. It is earned through cosmic cycles, Brahma said, and even if it were possible, he would cease to be the man you love. His mortality is the very essence that draws you to him. The urgency, the fragility, the courage to love despite death. Then I will give up my divinity, Durga declared. The council fell silent. Time itself seemed to hold its breath. If you do this, Brahma warned, you will become mortal, but your divine essence will remain within you, incompatible with human form. You will live one human lifetime, aging in days what should take decades, and he will watch you fade helpless. Is that the gift you wish to give him? Durga returned to earth, her heart a battlefield. She found Advaita in their garden, and he knew immediately that something had changed. They've forbidden it. He said simply. It wasn't a question. She told him everything. The price of love, the impossible choice. Then we must let each other go, Advaita said. Though his voice broke, like pottery, I will not be the reason you lose your immortality or yourself, and I will not lose you to the brevity of mortal years while I remain unchanged, watching century after century, carrying the memory of your face until the stars themselves forget their names. She replied. They stood at an impasse of impossible love. But fate, cruel architect, had other plans. The demon Raktabij's final curse, dormant all these months, awakened. To fully destroy him, Durga had absorbed his essence, not knowing it was poison to any mortal who touched her divine form directly. Their stolen moments had been safe only because she had dimmed her true nature. But when assassins attacked Advaita in the garden, instinct overtook caution. She saved him with her full divine power, her true form blazing forth. The victory was instant. The assassins turned to ash, but Advaita collapsed, divine fire burning through his mortal channels. She caught him as he fell, immediately understanding what she had done. My love, he whispered, in every prayer, in every life that may come after this one, I will search for you, and I will find you, she promised, tears falling like stars. I swear on my immortal soul, I will find you. He smiled once more, then faded like morning mist touched by sun. They say goddess Durga killed 1,000 demons that night, her grief transforming into holy rage. But no amount of destruction could bring him back. She returned to the heavens, but part of her remained forever in that garden, in that moment, holding the impossible weight of love that transcended worlds, but could not transcend the laws of existence itself. Even now, in the monsoons, some say they hear her weeping, and in the royal gardens where jasmine still blooms, poets claim that on certain twilight evenings, two shadows walk among the flowers, forever reaching for a touch that can never be.
You've traveled far, from the first breath of creation to the cosmic ocean, churning with possibility, from the forests of Rama to the battlefield of Arjuna, from Shiva's silence on Kailash to Krishna's whisper on a chariot. 3 hours, and still, we've only touched the surface. Because Hinduism is not a story with an ending. It never was. It's a river. It has no beginning you can point to, no ending you can see from here. Only depth, only flow, only the invitation, extended across 5,000 years, to keep asking, who am I? Why am I here? What is real? These questions didn't start with you. They were carved into temple walls before your civilization was born. They were whispered in forests by sages who gave up everything to find the answer. They were sung in Sanskrit by poets who understood that some truths can only be approached, never fully captured. And now they live in you. Because you watched, because you stayed, because somewhere in these 3 hours, something landed. That something is the beginning, not the end.